when I was a kid, I used to see these trails in the sky all the time. And so that's cool. A jet just went. And then you started to see a whole bunch of them. And the next thing you know, everybody in the neighborhood was fighting and arguing, and you didn't know why.
State reps debated legislation to ban what they call stratospheric aerosol injection. There was no mention of the word chemtrails in House Bill 1700, but lawmakers brought it up on their own on the House floor. This is the conspiracy theory that condensation trails left by aircraft in the sky are not frozen water vapor, but actually attempts to control the weather or somehow poison populations on the ground.
Well, good evening, everybody. It's Chris here from the Stop Cafe in Mirror, Alberta, coming to you as the Chris in the Chris and Carrie Show. And as luck would have it,
I'm actually here. I know it's
Carrie.
It's Carrie from the Chris and Carrie Show, and I'm in my basement in good old Calgary, Alberta, Canada, where there's no actual water. We've got water restrictions going on right now. Did you hear that, Chris?
No, that's weird.
City of 1.3 million people had one water main break off of a major thoroughfare, and we are now into water restrictions.
That's
no showering, so it's a good thing this is not smell-o-vision.
There's nothing to see there, Carrie. I mean, centralizing everything to the point where if one piece of the logistical train goes down, everybody suffers. That's not really that big of a deal.
No,
I mean, at least right now you have centralized water supply in Calgary, and it's not like everyone's allowed to have their own well like they were even 30 or 40 years ago. That would be horrible if some people could still have water.
Yeah. So I can't drink tap water, so I'm drinking a Canada Dry tonight.
Oh, nice. Did you know that they got sued because there's not actually enough ginger in their soft drink to be called made with real ginger?
I thought you were going to make a comment about it. It's not made in Canada and it's not dry.
Well, either or. Anyhow, Carrie, what did you think about that intro?
The intro was great. Very conspiratorial. I like it.
Yeah, the music made you feel something, didn't it?
Dude. It was almost like that Unsolved Mysteries thing back in the...
I loved that show.
Late 70s, early 80s.
That show was awesome.
And the host... Robert Stack would come on and he'd say that and he'd shit your pants in the corner. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? That's what we're hoping will happen tonight.
Well, there are no unsolved mysteries anymore. The answer to everything is in Facebook memes.
That is true. Absolutely.
Everything.
We should throw up some memes.
Yeah. Some of it makes me want to throw up. Anyway, I just wanted to actually let everyone know that intro video was done by our friend Phil over at Prime Gold Media. He does stuff like that all the time. He's pretty good at it. If you need something like a little video or some IT stuff, get in touch with him. He's a good guy to have on your side, especially if you need IT or video stuff done.
I'm sure he will make a couple of comments. And if you don't know who he is, just look for somebody named Phil.
Look for the colorful comments. Right, Phil? Yeah.
And then just DM him directly. Yeah.
Yeah. So tonight's show is going to be a really interesting one. It's one that I'm doing specifically because people have told me to shut my mouth about this topic. It's one that I've done specifically because I've seen a lot of ridiculous things going on Facebook, on the internet, even in my circles, that, in my opinion, are causing some people to take action towards certain things based on ignorance and misinformation. And I think that's a really dangerous thing. Freedom of expression is extremely important. We should be all allowed to say what we want, what we feel we want to say. But at the same time, if we're going to say something online publicly, I mean, we're opening ourselves up to public debate and public scrutiny. And so to those people who tell me to shut my mouth about this topic, I'll tell you the same thing that I said to AHS, only I'll say it a lot politer because I have a lot more respect for you than for the organization that stole my restaurant from me for 6 weeks a few years ago. So anyhow, tonight's episode is called Unpacking. What is it called? Unpacking Climate Engineering?
That's exactly what it's called. Yes.
with Jim Lee. Carrie, who is Jim Lee?
Jim Lee is he's the main guy behind ClimateViewer.com. And I'll throw that up on the stage right here. Great website. If you want to know anything about climate, there's Jim with a giant arrow in front of his face. You'll see what Jim actually looks like in a bit. He talks about climate, talks about, he's a climate and a viewer. Do I need to say more? Go to ClimateViewer.com and check it out.
Right on. I think we'll just let Jim explain what Climate Viewer News is. Absolutely. And why it's important for people to check it out. Personally, I do believe that it is important that people start paying attention to these things and get to the bottom of the real problems, because, we see all the time people posting things about, there's more contrails in the sky. There's more lines in the sky than when I was a kid. They last longer than when I was a kid. The sky is cloudier. It seems like
it's lighter.
It's lighter. It's whiter. It doesn't seem the same. And they feel like something's wrong. And in my opinion, they are right. There is something wrong, but it's not what they think. So let's, without wasting any more time, why don't we bring Jim on and we can let him introduce himself. Good day, Jim.
Good day, mates.
How you doing, Jim?
How are you doing?
I'm doing better than Carrie up in dry Canada.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Again, all it is ration, right? So they haven't actually told us that we can't use water, but they're basically saying, you can't do the normal stuff. You can't have a shower or a bath. You can't water your lawn. You can't do that. You can't wash your car. You can't do that sort of stuff, which is that's totally fine, right? But
it's not fine.
No, you're right. It's not fine. But at the same time, people are now talking on the internet, well, maybe I just won't stay home. Maybe I'll go out and go to a restaurant or go swimming in a swimming pool or.
Yeah,
well,
there's water there.
I've heard Canada referred to as China so many times recently. I'm actually one of my good friends, Bettina from Geoengineering Free Canada. Shout out to her. If you guys haven't heard, there's an activist group you might want to get in touch with. But she's, her between her and Dominic Marama, another China resident, he was my partner in crime in creating weathermodificationhistory.com. And what he did was actually compile over 890 newspaper articles from the 1800s to present. And he already had a Facebook group. We combined forces, and we've been best friends ever since. We tried to smuggle him from China down to South Carolina, where I live in the divided states of America. Yeah. And apparently that's much tougher than anybody could possibly imagine. And we finally ended up with, hey, your best bet is literally to take a one-way flight to Mexico and just walk over.
That's right. You're right.
So was it the U.S. Border Services or the CBSA that was the
it was the Canadian Border on Patrol. We were trying to get him a work visa, and basically say, hey, he's going to come down and work, as a designer for my business, Climate Viewer News LLC, and at the end of the day, we couldn't justify. They wanted to know, well, what's his projected earnings? And, he's going to have to pay taxes on all of that. We're going to need verification that he's actually making the amount of money that it just became a nightmare. But to the point, it's interesting that you're talking about water rationing, because really at the heart of all of this is something called the Blue Gold Rush. And there was a U.S. Air Force retired Lieutenant Colonel David Kaczynski. And he made a statement that I found very early on in my research that really stuck with me. Water will be to the next century what oil was to the last. And we've seen massive water rationing in California.
Yeah.
You're apparently experiencing, some of that, some of it's due to, just poor infrastructure design. But at least in the United States, the entire West Coast is strapped for water. They don't have enough water. So weather modification in the United States has a long, sordid history. And of course, you have big projects up in Alberta. Basically, the more western you get in North America, the more weather modification projects you're going to see. Cloud seeding projects almost exclusively are west of the Mississippi River in the United States. Mm-hmm. There are none. For example, in Tennessee, where they banned the chemtrails.
That's right.
They banned cloud seeding also, which I thought was kind of ironic because there hasn't been a cloud seeding project east of the Mississippi River since like 1952. But these are the kinds of things that people just, they either they're ignorant of it, or, they're trying to throw everything in, to make some headway into this chemtrail space. So colloquially, semantically, geoengineering is now like a blanket term for weather modification, for HARP, for chemtrails. All of the above is now just geoengineering.
So if it weighs the same as a duck, it's a witch.
Correct. Exactly. Love any reference to Monty Python. So the real question is, how many times does a swallow have to flap its wings to make a cirrus cloud? Because at the end of the day, people make this oversimplistic argument. Contrails disappear. Chemtrails stick around. Like that uncomfortable uncle that wants to touch your kids and won't leave your house.
Jeez.
Oh, you've got that
We
uncle.
did tell, by the way, for our viewers, we did tell Jim there's nothing, everything on the table, just say whatever you want to do. And
I deal with the tragedy that is the activist community with comedy, because otherwise I would literally just go walk right out into traffic and call it a day.
yeah.
I
So
agree.
I have to laugh so that I don't cry, because big girls don't cry, and facts don't care about your feelings. So tonight, if I offend you, sorry, not sorry, fuck you. You really need to grow up and grow some thick skin, because you're going to hear some things today that are not going to jive with what you want to hear out of a person. I don't do what I do to be popular. I do what I do for my daughters. Period.
Yeah.
This isn't for you. I just met Chris and Carrie. They seem like fine individuals, but this isn't for them either.
Yeah.
This is for my daughter, Caroline, and my daughter, Emma, because they're going to grow up in a world where by 2050, they will not be able to see the stars.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the world that we are headed towards, and good men do nothing, evil will prevail. So I find it incumbent on myself to get to the facts that I can prove, facts that I am not ashamed to stand in a court of law in front of a politician, debating a scientist, and I know what I'm talking about and can cite literature, peer-reviewed journals, studies. I know the entire history of geoengineering. We're definitely going to go into that. Because people don't even really know what geoengineering is anymore.
Isn't it those lines in the sky? Isn't that geoengineering?
Yes and no. So geoengineering is a blanket term for two main types of technology. One, reflecting sunlight. The other, capturing carbon and sticking it in the ground. That's called carbon dioxide removal, carbon sequestration. There's biochar, there's BECCS, there's ocean iron fertilization. There's all kinds of stuff with CDR, carbon dioxide removal. We're going to throw that in the ocean because I don't care about that. suck all the CO2 you want out of the air. You're not going to put a dent in it. And CO2 is plant food. Let's not be idiots. CO2 follows temperature, not the other way around. It's not a driver of the temperature of the planet. And I won't go into the idiots that came up with this idea.
That's a whole nother week of shows.
Right. So we're going to just throw that one out. If you're a climatard, just tune out right now. You're not going to like what I got to say. I believe that, the climate cult has really hijacked the narrative, and through all the typical mind control apparatus, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Through fear, uncertainty, and doubt, they can move the needle and get people to willingly relinquish their rights for the betterment of humanity. And of course, Henry Kissinger famously said, if we were facing an external threat like aliens or some existential threat, that people would willingly relinquish their rights to get their protection from their one world government.
And we just saw it.
And it's happening all the time. And the saddest point in my life was watching free, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, idiot lemmings just lining up with their face diapers, doing exactly what they were told, and putting up little plastic shields like that can magically block airborne particles. And then I started thinking to myself, okay, so if you don't understand that saliva in the air can go around that plastic freaking sheet, how am I going to explain to you atmospheric science and what's going on up there in the sky? This is a real struggle because there's a lack of attention span, there's a lack of intellectual curiosity, and there's a lot of confirmation bias that goes into them chemtrails. So I like to start with terminology. Terminology really drives you can't have a thought without hearing your language in your head. We can agree on that. So as Joseph Stalin said, we would not let, ideas are more powerful than guns. We would not let our enemies have guns. Why should we let them have ideas? That is the root of mind control, is word control. So if you control words, you control the narrative, you control the mind. So this chemtrail versus contrail argument is what is called slave speak. When you were briefly introducing what I do, I don't just do weather modification, space weather modification, and geoengineering, although that is the bulk of what I'm interested in and what I mostly talk about. I talk about the 3 Ps: pollution, privacy, and propaganda. Why? Because if you talk about pollution issues and you're effective as an activist, government agencies, private corporations are going to violate your privacy. If you're really effective, then they're going to make propaganda about you. PR starts there. Ask Joe Rogan. So the bigger you get, the saying goes, first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win. That's the world we live in. Taking these things into account, you have to understand that slave speak is language that maintains a master-slave relationship. And it's basically high-level and low-level descriptors. Low-level descriptors. I'll give an example. Turn on Corey Browder. No. How about no? This is a katana. We all know what a katana is. Yeah. We can hold a katana. The katana can kill you. There's no arguing about what this is. This is a low-level descriptor. These are throwing knives. They are something I can physically hold in my hand. I can throw them at the wall. If I throw them at you, you will feel them. They are real. These are low-level descriptors, meaning if I say katana, I don't have to show you a freaking katana for you to know it's a sword. I mean, unless you've never heard the word katana. High-level descriptors are words like good, evil, God, government, vaccines. This word used to mean something that grants you immunity to a disease after taking it. Now it's a prophylactic. It's something that helps you ease the burden of dealing with the symptoms. It doesn't actually cure the thing or prevent it. Therefore, that word has now become a high-level descriptor. It has high-level descriptors are open to interpretation of the individual based on their perception of reality, based on the totality of the things they have learned.
So a high-level descriptor could be used to confirm or deny your own bias, depending on how you receive it.
Right. So confirmation bias plays heavily into this. So I can't help myself. If you're a Dane Wigington geoengineering watch acolyte and you're Dane bred, then you're going to believe, as he has clearly stated on the front of his page, since I went to the EPA in 2015 and testified about jet fuel making clouds, that high bypass turbofans that are on commercial flights are incapable of making contrails. If you believe that, then the only answer is every single plane has a pipe, a pump, and is part of a secret program to dump chemicals everywhere. This is all intentional spraying. All of these words are high-level descriptors. What is spraying? Are you talking about the fuel injectors? Because we have fuel injectors in our car. They spray gas into the pistons, right? And that's how we actually get the engine moving. Jet engines, they have, the same thing. They spray gas into the turbine that spins a fan blade. The fan actually does 70% of the thrust. But doesn't that make more contrails? In fact, if you follow the science and you read Ulrich Schumann, who is the top scientist on studying plane farts, oh, that's not a high-level descriptor. That's pretty low level. I could go lower. Artificial cloud creation. What is artificial? Not natural. Man-made. When you're talking about a condensation trail, the debunkers are wrong and the chemtards are wrong. Both of them are wrong. This is the conclusion I came to. And I'm at a point in my life where I have so little fucks to give, I'd have to take a loan out to give them. So I'm going to offend both parties right now. Debunkers say it's just condensation. Fact checkers hate fact checkers. Fact checkers are the worst kind of people on the planet because they really suck at their job. I debunk fact checkers for fun, and then get everybody in my audience to tweet at them. They'll say it's a condensation trail. It's just water vapor condensating. And then on the other side, chemtards say, but condensation trails evaporate. They don't turn into, blocking out the sky, which is geoengineering. Hold up. Hey, debunker, condensating on what? Hey, chemtard, how do you make a cloud? So if you don't understand these two gaping holes in each side's explanation, then you're not going to ever get to the truth. So I was a chemtard, self-avowed chemtard, retired, learned about slave speak, deleted 300 articles I had written. That hurt. as Carl Sagan said, for most people, it is once the bamboozle has you, it is simply too painful to admit to yourself that you were wrong.
We're seeing that a lot today too.
And I wanted to, and I am not self-actualized. I am not a transcendent being. I am a flawed human. I am a sinner just like everybody else. But I wanted to try to rise above. I didn't want to go the route of the fear porn pushers. Should I define fear porn? I think it's kind of self-explanatory.
I think so.
Fear is more addictive than drugs, sex, gambling. There are more people on the internet who are addicted to fear than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
That's why there's an industry for this. That's why there's the clickbait titles with all the scary innuendo and the whole world's gonna die tomorrow every single day. I didn't want to go that route, and I wanted to get to the truth. So I started with a very simple premise. Chemtrailers say aluminum and barium. Let me find the aluminum and barium. And it took me less than a week. And I'm like, the jet fuel is loaded with aluminum and barium. You've got to be shitting me. It was that simple. So back to the original question. Condensation trail versus chemical trail. Both are right. What does it take to make a cloud? It takes three things. It takes a cloud seed, water vapor, and galactic cosmic rays, or some form of ionization. In the weather modification world, one form of ionization can be provided through either cloud ionizers, which release negatively charged ions, or through the use of lasers to excite particles and ionize them. In the case of commercial aviation or plane farts, chemi-ions are actually produced in the process of burning jet fuel. It has its own ionization method. Friction. All those particles coming out of the back of the plane produce ionization and static. Let's just say static to keep it simple. Static cling, baby. In order for you to make a cloud, you need something to make that water vapor stick to that cloud seed. That's how you get clouds. So when a chemtrail, a contrail, the plane farts fan out and block out the sky, they are no longer either a chemtrail or a contrail. It is a cirrus cloud. And if people don't get that simple point, they're so stuck on the terminology and this debate. It's such a Hegelian dialect. I mean, it's so gay versus straight, black versus white. You know what I mean? Republican versus Democrat. I don't know what you guys have up there, but
Not much.
okay, it's same thing. Tories and Labor Party.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Was I close?
You were close. Yeah,
That was
we still call them Tories, I guess.
We have liberals and less liberals.
Yeah.
That, I mean, when with a guy like Jussie Trombone running your country,
Yeah, that's embarrassing.
Jesus
Thanks
Christ,
for bringing
that
it
guy.
up. So what you just said about the making clouds. So if an airplane is leaving exhaust at 40,000 feet, and that water vapor and the static charge is attaching to, say, like an ice crystal or a piece of soot or something, and making clouds, which that's how cloud is made, is it what we're seeing when it fans out? Is that process continuing with the water vapor that's already there because there's more seeds, there's more ice, there's more things for them to attach to?
Yes and no. In most cases, what you have are what generally speaking we would call them contrail forming regions. Scientifically, they're called ice supersaturated regions. You can see this on radiosonde data. So radiosondes are basically weather balloons that they throw up in the air, And as it's going up, it's got one line that shows the temperature and then another line that shows the dew point. And where that dew point depression and the temperature kind of ride together, that's where you have supersaturation. You have just the right temperature, just the right amount of water vapor, and then it spreads apart where the inversion occurs. That's where the line of the troposphere ends and the stratosphere begins. That's called the tropopause. So if a plane is flying above the tropopause, it's not going to make clouds, period. There's no water vapor there. But the plane farts are still happening. So the part that people don't really grasp is geoengineering in its roots, where it came from. Crash course, here I go. 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupts. We'll start before that. 1977, Cesare Marchetti comes up with the word geoengineering, specifically talking about carbon dioxide removal. 1991, Mount Pinatubo erupts. It cools down the planet. Scientists get a boner. Scientists go, hey, we could mimic volcanoes. Lawrence Livermore National Labs, 1997, Lowell Wood, Edward Teller, and Roderick Hyde. Lowell Wood is also known as Dr. Evil. Look it up. Edward Teller invented the hydrogen bomb. These are creepy dudes. They came up with the idea of mimicking volcanoes through stratospheric aerosol injection. This is a form of solar radiation management. I already mentioned all the different types of CDR. Now we're going to talk about the types of SRM. There's stratospheric aerosol injection, pumping chemicals into the stratosphere to reflect sunlight to cool the planet. Then there's marine cloud brightening, which is similar to ship tracks. Ship tracks are the same thing as chemtrails, just coming out of international shipping tanks. They were burning something called bunker fuel. Bunker fuel is heavy fuel oil. It's very unrefined oil that is loaded with metals and sulfur. This would create very white, long, thousands of miles long, hundreds of miles wide chemtrails over the Pacific Ocean in marine stratocumulus clouds. Not cirrus. Why? It's the ground. It's not at 40,000 feet. So it would create a blanket over the ocean, which would actually reflect sunlight and cool the ocean. In 2020, they banned bunker fuel. The scientists, the geoengineers, got straight livid. MIT Technology Review put out a paper saying, we're about to stop a massive experiment in cooling the planet because they were banning bunker fuel because it's toxic to humans. But they wanted their sulfur back. Why? Back to Edward Teller. 1997, what they were focusing on was how Mount Pinatubo, when it erupted, it launched its, ash plume very high into the stratosphere. This lofted a bunch of sulfur into the stratosphere. Sulfur has a cooling effect. So in their original paper, 1997, they were specifically targeting stratospheric sulfur injections to mimic what volcanoes do naturally. However, in 1999, they brought in Ken Caldera. Ken Caldera is, for your old school geoengineers, study students, you'll know the name. If you don't know the name, you're completely ignorant on the topic of geoengineering. Go back to school. Ken Caldera and David Keith, if you don't know these two names, you don't know anything about geoengineering. I suggest you go to climateviewer.com/geoengineering, start getting educated. So they brought Ken Caldera in. They said, we want you to validate our idea, our hypothesis of spraying sulfur into the atmosphere to do this. So he came up with a climate model, predicted what a geoengineered world would be in 1999. And then the following paper was around 2000, where they then switched from sulfur to talking about aluminum. But then all the papers came out about how toxic aluminum would be. So the game kept changing. But the birth of geoengineering in its modern form was Mount Pinatubo eruption and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory with Dr. Evil and Company in 1997. 1997 is also the year that the word chemtrail was first used on the internet. The first articles about chemtrails were associated with ethylene dibromide being used in JP-8 jet fuel in military flights. Turns out, the NATO single fuel concept ran from 1988 to 1996. They converted from JP4 jet fuel to JP8, this new jet fuel, which was one fuel for the battlefield. The idea of being able to put the same fuel in the jets and the bombers and the cargo planes as you do in the Humvees and the Jeeps and the tanks and all of that. Everybody's using the same kind of fuel. However, this led to a marked increase in metals in the fuel. So when people noticed that in 1996, 1997, 1998, the original articles about chemtrails were all about JP-8 jet fuel, and though they were completely incorrect about their assertions on ethylene dibromide, they were looking at the right culprit, because what changed worldwide simultaneously? Every single NATO country changing their jet fuel to a dirtier fuel, very similar to how bunker fuel works, not heavy fuel oil. I know there's going to be a science nerd or a debunker out there going, oh, he's saying they put bunker fuel in jet engines. That's just stupid. No, we're still talking about kerosene, people, not diesel, heavy fuel oil, which is bottom of the barrel stuff. But regardless, an example, JP5 jet fuel had about 5,000 parts per billion of calcium. JP8 has 31,000 parts per billion of calcium. What did Ken Caldera and David Keith and all the other geoengineers move to? They went from sulfur to aluminum to titanium oxide. Diamond dust, we're not going to get into that. That's a whole nother show. But they settled on calcium as the chemical of choice for geoengineering. What is the stated purpose of geoengineering stratospheric aerosol injection? Well, for starters, it's got to be in the stratosphere. Mm-hmm. Most planes are not flying in the stratosphere, right? And the higher in the stratosphere you go, the longer the chemicals stay there. That's why they're targeting the stratosphere.
What do you mean they're targeting it?
The reason that they're targeting the stratosphere as a candidate for stratospheric aerosol injection is because Mount Pinatubo. It was the fact that those chemicals get lofted up there. It's very similar to like nuclear winter. If you put, let's say, 100 million tons of chemicals into the troposphere, where our weather occurs, where most flights occur, that's going to rain out and hit the ground in anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months tops. If you put those same chemicals, the same amount, at 18 kilometers, they're going to last from 2 months to 2 years before they hit the ground. So this allows them to build up more and more aerosols in the atmosphere. This is why the sky is milky white today. When people talk about the sun used to be yellow and now it's white, when they see the horizon, and the horizon is milky freaking white, it may be slightly blue overhead, it may be completely white overhead, but regardless, that horizon is going to be white. Why is that? That is geoengineering. That is what Edward Teller, Roderick Hyde, and Lowell Wood were planning. That is what David Keith wanted to do. That is what Ken Caldera wanted to do. That's what Bill Gates paid for. So there's this disconnect between what the scientists are stating as their goal, whitening the sky, and focusing on clouds coming out of planes. But that too can be hijacked for geoengineering purposes as well. For starters, for a clarification, clouds are weather. So if we were going to like first and foremost nail down what this is, it's weather modification. Because sunny day versus cloudy day is weather. We can agree on that.
Yeah.
Cloud seeding. I came at this backwards. I learned about geoengineering around 2008. I debated Ken Caldera and David Keith from 2010 through 2013. In 2013, the chemtrail people came for me and were like, "Splain this." All this time, I was mapping out cloud seeding projects, understanding the the entire history of cloud seeding from its invention to being used to steer hurricanes 11 months later, Project Storm Fury, Project Skywater, mapping out all of the weather modification projects worldwide, researching every single paper that the geoengineers themselves were saying. And then the chemtrail people came for me. So then I had to work my way backwards, but having this fundamental basis of information on their claims of how they do these things and what they do, essentially, planes are cloud seeding and they're creating clouds. So you have to understand it like this. We talked about what makes a cloud. A cloud seed, what they call a cloud condensation nuclei, water vapor and some kind of static to make it stick. Eventually, enough water vapor sticks to that cloud seed, it gets big enough, it falls on the ground. We call that rain. If it's cold enough, we call it snow. If it's big enough, we call it hail. That's precipitation, bitches. So that's the oversimplification of weather. Now, what is it that is in the jet exhaust that is causing them to stick around? It is black carbon. Black carbon first of all, it's shaped like a sphere. And it comes in these agglomerates. It sticks together in these grape-like structures. It's called an aciniform structure. That allows a huge surface area for water to stick to. Because of the temperature friction and other ionization processes happening in the plume of an aircraft, wait for it, guess what the black carbon's coated in? Graphene. Every single particle, every single soot particle that comes out of a plane is a little graphene time bomb. This is the part the airline industry does not want you to know. Those little graphene time bombs are filled with metals. I think it's presentation time. I'm feeling a presentation coming on.
Absolutely, please do.
So let me pop something up here real quick. Oh, since I already have that open, let me right click it and open a new window.
Before you do that, Jim, I got to ask you, when the chemtrail cult came for you, did you get pictures sent to you like this?
Oh, yes.
Hundreds. I have been able to reverse image search or literally just bring up Photoshop and read the numbers on that damn bottle right there.
Yeah.
And I have been able to track down every single one of those. Now, what I want you, you've already got it up there, testing containers. Now try this word, ballast tanks. Ballast. And we don't want ships, so put ballast tanks, airline testing.
Hey, The same.
That's chem tanks. I've seen those in evidence people
What?
sent me.
What in the hell? They've got a whole nother name for the chemtrail things. Type this one in. Donald Trump tours chemtrail plane.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that was a good one.
It's good times, right?
In some of those pictures, people had photoshopped, like, you see my Team Chemtrail shirt that I ordered off the internet. They'd actually photoshopped that as badges on their arms to convince people that it was a nefarious project.
So that's actually, now somebody had to straighten me out. What's the Dreamliner? It's a 777. That was the testing of the 777 Dreamliner.
Or wait, 787. I can't remember.
Damn it! Now you're gonna make me look it up because I got it wrong last time and somebody raked me over the coals. 787. So yeah. In fact, let's just Donald Trump tours Dreamliner. And yeah, there's the Trump full speech at Boeing 787 Dreamliner unveiling. So you can look it up yourself. I'm not going to bore you with that. I want to get to the important stuff. But the point is that people repurpose these images and they know they're being deceptive. There's no way they don't. Now, there's a whole lot of people who just collect these damn things. But that's what was going on there. What is a ballast tank? We might as well address it. Ballast tanks, oh my God, you've got to see this video. I got to see if I could find this real quick. My wife, literally, her jaw dropped open. Cargo shift, plane crash.
Yes.
You know the one I'm talking about? So this happened at Bagram Air Force Base. Let's get started with some fun stuff. So if you don't do proper ballast training, testing, this is the kind of stuff you're going to end up seeing.
Yeah, I remember that.
Holy wow. Oh wow.
Load shifted just after takeoff, caused the nose to pitch up uncontrollably. They couldn't recover.
And for those who want the details, video appears to show deadly Bagram air crash, and it literally says on there, this was April 29, 2013. 7 U.S. crew members were killed when a cargo plane, a Boeing 747, crashed shortly after takeoff because basically the cargo inside it shifted rapidly. What ballast tanks attempt to do in flight testing is pump water from tank to tank to try to throw the plane off balance, to simulate what happened there.
Yeah.
And they do it fast, really big pumps.
Really big pumps, really fast transitions. If they didn't do this sort of testing, that's the result. Now, of course, in this case, we're talking probably about a tank or something like that that came loose from its straps. And, military plane, really heavy object, moved around. The whole damn thing blew up, killing everybody on board. But now let's imagine that 400-pound fat guy decides to run to the bathroom really fast, or the cargo in the cargo hold underneath shifts rapidly because of turbulence, and suddenly the plane takes a nosedive. These are the kinds of things that they're trying to simulate with ballast tanks. Meanwhile, chemtrail people are constantly using these videos, these photos as evidence, which is evidence of nothing. It's confirmation bias. You were looking for pumps and pipes and bottles. You found them.
I was fooled by that at one point as well.
I think we all were. Like I said, I was one of you two. I believed it at first, but let's be realistic. So I created a page specifically about this and a hashtag because at the time Black Lives Matter was a huge trending topic. I decided to come up with Hashtag cirrus clouds matter. I could tell you about the patents, Phil, but like the patents are ideas people try to capitalize on. How many patents actually make it into the real world? Slim to none. Very few. Nathan Myhrvold worked for Microsoft. He was known as the patent troll. He literally patented hundreds of thousands of things just so that he could try to hopefully capitalize on them in the future. I got the chat up. I can't help myself.
No, that's good.
But right here, and this is what I want you to focus on. I went looking for aluminum and barium. I found it in the jet fuel. And then I went and I found result after result. If I come down here to, metals, where is it? Are cirrus clouds filled with metals? You can go just to the IPCC. And in their own reports, they say, yeah, aluminum, titanium, chromium, iron, nickel, barium are estimated to be in the parts per billion exiting the nozzles. And then they cited 1975 reports. And I went, you're the freaking IPCC. Do you give so little of a damn that you haven't updated this since 1975? So, of course, I looked deeper. And this was from the United States military. Trace element and polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbon analysis of jet engines, fuels, Jet A, JP5, and JP8 in the year 2000. And what you see here is aluminum, not detected in Jet A. Samples vary.
Yeah.
How many samples did they actually run? I've seen sample, as you're going to see in this other study, there was plenty of aluminum found. But regardless, in JP5, 2,100 parts per billion, JP8, 9,300.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned earlier, calcium, 5,000, up to 31,000 in JP8. Strontium, 70 to 351. Barium, pretty small. Why? Mm-hmm. Because there isn't very much barium in the fuel itself, but there is in the lubricants in the engine. The oils that they actually lubricate the engine are filled with barium. But as you can see, here's the list. And what we do is we go back up here, and this is the most accurate study that was done. The detected metallic particles were internally mixed with soot particles. As I mentioned earlier, and I think I have a photo of it right here, actually. This is a cloud seed. That's 1 nanometer. Those little dots are lead inside a piece of ice and soot,
which becomes rain.
Right. And this was from an article called Lead-Lined Clouds from the American Chemical Society. So I could go on ad nauseum showing you pictures of, all of these little things, using nanoparticles to add to biofuels. We'll add aluminum nanoparticles to the Jatropha biodiesel, which is a Jatropha plant that's an oilseed crop that they're using. They call it sustainable aviation fuel. And then they're going to grind up some aluminum nanoparticles to get the jet fuel going. It's almost like putting an octane booster in your Hemi Cuda. Makes sense?
What's the purpose of doing that?
Increasing thrust.
So they're trying to match the energy capacity of a hydrocarbon with a plant-based oil. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's basically what they're describing right here in this paper. You can just go to it. Nanoparticles increase biofuel performance. I mean, it says it all, right? This is for freaking 2011, bro. So anyway, back to the real point I want to make with this. All the metals, they're in the soot. All the metals are in the jet fuel. The most abundant metals found were chromium, iron, molybdenum, sodium, calcium, and aluminum. Also found were vanadium, barium, cobalt, copper, nickel, lead, magnesium, manganese, silicon, titanium, and zirconium. This is from chemical characterization of freshly emitted particulate matter from aircraft using single particle mass spectrometry. This is from 2016. Now, I've got 10 more papers like this, but this is one of the best ones just because it's single particle mass spectrometry. When you're talking about nanoparticles, being able to differentiate how many nanoparticles there are and what they are, there are very few instruments that can do that, and they are very freaking expensive. Mm-hmm. And me being the graphics artist that I am, I figured, why the hell not? Let's just make it into a big ass infographic so people can, get really wrap their head around how much of the fucking periodic table we're talking about here. And by the way, if you compare this to the magnetic periodic table, all of these blue ones right here are magnetic, which flies in the face of what you hear from, the entire chemtrail community, who constantly say, well, they're spraying the chemtrails to put aluminum in the air because it helps with the 5G and all of this stuff. Riddle me this. Is aluminum fucking magnetic?
No.
It's not.
You're right.
So how dumb is the argument that they're spraying aluminum to work with the radars when it's not magnetic? In fact, it would be reflective. It wouldn't help at all. Meanwhile, scandium, titanium, vanadium, chromium, manganese, iron, cobalt, nickel, copper, zirconium, niobium, and molybdenum, those are magnetic. Look it up. So all of these chemicals are in jet fuel. They're being burned every day. These are the chemicals that water vapor condensates on. So if you don't understand that part, you're never going to get past the chemtrail versus contrail argument. Mm-hmm. What's even worse about this situation is when you go to the next logical step. Well, how is this stuff getting into the stratosphere? Well, I'll show you this. Globe.adsb exchange. At any given point, you can look up here and you can just go to the high end of the chart, which is almost pink. And then you can look at these private jets. And when you look at these private jets, what are they doing? They're flying at 42 to 45,000 feet.
Very smooth up there.
Oh, yeah, because they are in the stratosphere. So at the equator, right about here, the stratosphere, the height of the stratosphere is typically about 38 to 42,000 feet. As you get to the Canadian border, the height of the stratosphere is typically 36
You're right.
to 40,000 feet. Yeah. As you get closer to the North Pole, we're talking 32,000 feet. Here's the problem with that. If you go to VentuSky, I don't know what I just clicked, but I'm scared to even
those games.
I don't know what that is. But if you go to VentuSky and or is it windy.com? Yeah. And you go to more layers and you come all the way down here and it's hidden all the way at the bottom. Radiosondes. Are they already on? They're on. Let's go over here. All right. So these are radiosonde sites. If you click on them, it'll actually show you what I was talking about. So these are the radiosonde data, and they show the height in millibars over here. And right here, we're talking 22,000 feet. As we go up, we're at 32,000 feet. Not very close together. Mm-hmm. Depending on where you actually click, you're going to see far apart. Should not be making any contrails. That's why it's nice and clear all the way through here. There aren't any freaking clouds, clearly.
You can tell by looking at that where contrails will form.
Right. So you come up here. Oh, wait, what is that?
Yeah.
I mean, let's look at the area and let's look at the chart. The temperature and the dew point depression are almost identical to 28,000 feet. Why does it spread rapidly right there at 29,000 feet?
Stratosphere.
That is the stratosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, and I'm going to go back, we were just looking right here at this area. If I go back to here and we look at that area, this plane flying at 36,000 feet is suddenly in the stratosphere. Every plane up here is in the stratosphere.
We're all flying over 30,000 in Canada for sure.
Right. So we've found on, looking at radiosonde data in some cases where the stratosphere had a height, like right here, it's at 40,000 feet. You can start to see the deviation. There have been cases where, who is this so-called expert? Bitch, my name is right there under my name. Jim Lee at ClimateViewer, climateviewer.com. I am the top expert on geoengineering, weather modification, space weather modification in the world on freaking the internet. And I have gladly opened an invitation to anybody with the brass cojones to debate me anytime, anywhere, with any moderator. I will make that time, and you will see an ass spanking like you've never seen before.
And I would help facilitate it.
I will gladly do it. Bring anybody who's willing to come on and argue about this subject, because I know more about this subject than any of these other people talking about it.
So here's a question that I know is going to come up if it's not already been asked in the comments. You have two planes that visually look like they're flying at the same altitude. One is leaving a trail and one is not. Now, my guess is maybe one is, let's say it's flying at 36,000. The other one's flying at 30 or 32.
Click the stone. Click the Stone Lake comment real quick. That's my boy from Canada.
All roads lead this one.
No, the bottom one.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Thank you very much. Love you, Stone. That's my dog.
Nice.
It's my brother from another mother in Canada. So your question. So before you say that,
yeah.
I said all that, and I wanted to show you what a radiosonde looked like so that you could visualize it and see it in real time. You saw the clouds, you saw the height, you saw the narrow lines I was talking about. Now I want you to understand this. Jet exhaust in the stratosphere by the Indian Space Organization, possible climatic implications of high altitude black carbon emissions, the soot that we've been talking about that's filled with the metals. Come on, invite geoengineering watch. Be brave, Dane. Barb's another friend of mine. Dane Wigington is scared of me. Like I am. He's Voldemort and I'm fucking Harry Potter.
Well,
all right.
Interrupt his funding.
Yeah.
He will never ever debate me because it would ruin him forever. In fact, to everybody watching the show, I'm going to make a bet with you. My PayPal is jim@climateviewer.com. Go to Dane Wigington's website. Go to Dane Wigington's Geoengineering Watch on Twitter. I'll show you. Anyway, I won't be petty. He's blocked me on all the things. But if you go there and you type in climateviewer.com in the comments, or you mention Jim Lee, just say the word Jim Lee or climateviewer.com, and Dane will ban your ass whether you've been donating to him for years or not. You will immediately be banned. Test it yourself. The difference between Dane and me is that I encourage you to go to Geoengineering Watch, listen to what that moron has to say, because I don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. He may have some value. There may be some facts in there. I don't listen to him because I find it nauseating. But if that's your thing, hey, you might find some nuggets of truth there.
We don't have to give him any more publicity than that.
But he does not want the same.
Yeah.
In reverse. Regardless, evidence of such particles. The Indian Space Organization, though airborne, black carbon is known to dissipate and settle down in a few months under the influence of wind and rain, and unlikely to travel upwards of 4 kilometers. However, a group of scientists, including from the Indian Institute of Science at ISRO Vikram Sarabhi Space Center, say they now have evidence of such particles, black carbon soot from planes, existing up to 18 kilometers in the stratosphere.
Wow.
And this is the scariest thing I ever heard. And there are about 10,000 per cubic centimeter.
That sounds like a lot.
It is. When you actually consider the world gets bigger the further you go away from it.
That's right. Yeah.
That's just circumference, guys. That is astronomically dense. And it's all from jet fuel. I mean, it's all from
say earlier, it's a good thing it's just in parts per billion, because it's not that big of a problem. It's only parts per billion, right? It's not like we burn much jet fuel every day.
Oh, that's where you're wrong. So, just in the United States, we burn 17 million barrels of jet fuel per day. Just
So
the
for those
United
of you
States.
that don't know what a barrel is, I believe it's 180 liters or 220, depending on what barrel you're talking about. It's a lot.
It's a lot of freaking jet fuel. So at the end of the day, these can, when you go back to what David Keith was saying, and I might as well bring this up because, maybe some people are starting to get confused about, who these people are. So I'm going to go to climateViewer.com/geoengineering. And right here, I made a nice little infographic just to shit on these guys because they deserve it. This is David. Go ahead.
That's the guy that said, I'm okay with killing tens of thousands of people to save potentially 1 million.
Right. Well, he said worse things than that. But if you look at who's funding all of their research, you have the National Science Foundation. Right here is the Fund for Innovative Climate and Energy Research, FICER. That's Bill Gates. And these are the authors that have been writing all the scientific papers. This is an older version that I wrote back in 2014 when I made, put these graphics up here. Here's an even more in-depth breakdown of who's actually paying for geoengineering studies. And when you get into the Harvard Solar Geoengineering Research Program, the Open Philanthropy, we all know who that is. George Soros. FCEA, Forum for Climate Engineering Assessment, Philip Rasmussen, C2G, Open Society Foundation, again, George Soros, Pfizer, Gates Ventures, Bill Gates. He funds our Harvard Solar Geoengineering Program, which is, was run by Frank Koich and David Keith. David Keith finally gave up trying to launch his SCOPEX program. He's now moved on to, back to where he started, that we could geoengineer the planet with 14 private jets. In 2010, when Bill Gates asked him, how many planes do we need to geoengineer the entire planet? He paired up with Aurora Flight Sciences and came up with estimates and said, well, we could do this with as few as 14 Boeing 747-400s. So from 2010 to this year, February 2024, he's still saying the same thing. We only need 14 or 15 planes to geoengineer the entire planet. So people don't understand any of this. They don't understand the people involved, the money involved, the purposes of these, what it would look like, how it works, any of that. And I'm trying to go, if there's 130,000 flights per day, And the sons of bitches that are trying to fund geoengineering, that want to make geoengineering a reality, are saying, we only need 14 planes to geoengineer the whole planet. Then what are all the rest of these planes doing?
Well, they're leaving lines, so they must be geoengineering.
Well, it's very clear, that the reason why we have a problem is A, they're making clouds. B, any of them that are flying in the stratosphere, their pollution, their plane farts are going to stick around longer, which is going to whiten the sky. It's not going to make a cloud, but it's going to do geoengineering. Why? Because it's called stratospheric aerosol injection. What's coming out of the back of the plane when you burn jet fuel? Aerosols. What aerosols? We just went over it. These aerosols, they're fucking metals and soot covered in graphene. So if
these private planes that are going up, run by billionaires, they're actually the ones that are probably causing more of this than commercial airliners.
They are. In fact, it gets weirder. If you go to my Substack, I intentionally wrote the very first article on my Substack. It's climateviewer.substack.com. The very first article, I wanted it to be the most controversial because guess what? This just doesn't sound right when you hear it, but let's be realistic. I want to screw with people's minds. Geoengineering with contrails.
Yeah.
So here's where the rub is. Yes, it's pollution. Yes, it's whitening the sky anytime you fly in the stratosphere. But there's also the scientific community, which is trying to mitigate non-CO2 emissions from airlines. What does that mean? I'm gonna pause the screen share just for a moment, just so we can really break this down. The climate cult has determined that the cirrus clouds made by planes trap more heat than they actually cool the planet. That means carbon taxes. They were already on their ass for carbon taxes because of their CO2 emissions. But then when I went in 2015, I quoted two very important studies, one by Jim Haywood, one by Olivier Boucher. Olivier Boucher happened to be the head of the IPCC aerosol cloud interaction team, both saying things like planes are creating more global warming than all of the CO2 ever emitted by flights. The exact quote is, a single aircraft, this is Jim Haywood, a single aircraft operating in conditions favorable for persistent contrail formation appears to exert a contrail-induced radiative forcing some 5,000 times greater than the recent estimates of the average persistent contrail radiative forcing for the entire civil aviation fleet. I'm going to translate that from scientist to redneck. We thought that all of the contrails that turned into cirrus clouds had this much effect on blocking sunlight or trapping heat. All of them. But it turns out a single plane was 5,000 times higher than we estimated for every plane. That's some oh shit comments coming out of a scientist. And this was in 2009. For those who are into scientific literature, Jim Haywood et al. 2009. Look it up. You can read it yourself. I have the references on my EPA hearing, still available on climateviewer.com. Olivier Boucher said, contrails formed from aircraft can evolve into cirrus clouds. I mean, that's like a duh. Mm-hmm. Contrails formed by aircraft can evolve into cirrus clouds indistinguishable from those formed naturally. These spreading contrails may be causing more climate warming today than all the carbon dioxide emitted by aircraft since the start of aviation.
Wow. Wow.
So now the climate cultists and the carbon taxers out there have got their, gamer reference. They've got their sniper scopes quick scoped on the airline industry going for a headshot. And the airline industry is trying to work their way out of this through what they call contrail avoidance or the biofuels. One of the ideas put forth was biofuels for contrail control. Well, we'll reduce the amount of soot coming out of planes. That'll reduce the amount of clouds we create. And that will offset. This is what we call greenwashing. It's where you virtue signal and you say you're going to fix a problem. But in reality, it's just moving the goalpost. Nothing really changes. They tried the biofuel thing for about 9 years, and eventually they come to the conclusion it didn't fix a damn thing. So now they're back to square one. So now they're moving on to contrail avoidance. So you end up with some pretty crazy things like this. You're going to love this one. Oh my God. You can't make this stuff up. The truth is always stranger than fiction. And I love that. And there you go. How AI is helping airlines mitigate the climate impact of contrails. Google AI is partnered with American Airlines to avoid creating contrails by determining where the contrails exist and then routing the flights around them to avoid making them at nighttime. Mm-hmm. Because at nighttime is the problem. So if you go back to my little, my frequently asked question page, I made a nice infographic about that. Want to see it? Because I love making, infographics. They make the world go round, right? In fact, it's on my geoengineering page. So let me go back there. This was the EPA hearing thing. Going here, back to here, and to here, I have a SRM versus ERM. What is ERM? It's this. So if I open this image in a new tab, make it full screen, this pretty much tells the whole story. Solar radiation management is blocking sunlight, reflects back to space. But these clouds are made of metals, 75% man-made metals. We've covered this. They actually create a blanket in the sky, which traps heat at the ground. When I originally stumbled across it, I was looking for intent in the geoengineering chemtrail world. Mm-hmm. This is where I found it. Less warming, more cooling contrails predictable for operational planning. Dr. Ulrich Schumann, speaking at the ICAO Colloquium on Aviation and Climate Change 2010. That word more, that's intent. That's not, hey, planes are just accidentally farting and making clouds. That's, we want less warming, heat trapping at the ground. This is called Earth radiation management. It's a new term. Most people never even heard it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So when I heard that, he created something called the Contrail Cirrus Prediction Tool. And that's the predictable for operational planning part. By using radio sound data and satellite data, they could find these ice supersaturated regions and know when planes are going to do this. Oh, by the way, this is why you see the on-off chemtrails, by the way. Whenever you're flying up and a plane is climbing, yep, and it's flying through one water vapor body in the sky and then another water vapor body in the sky, chemtrail, no chemtrail, chemtrail, no chemtrail. Talked to many pilots about this. I'm actually getting ready to do my second interview with a pilot. We spoke for 3 hours and 38 minutes last night on the phone. Best conversation I've had in a year. It's gonna be a banger because the shit that she said is insane. There's a monetary issue that we're gonna. I don't want to spoil it. But money is the answer. What is the question? That's the oldest saying in the book. So I
should have caught that, because this whole time I was stuck on the no, they're not spraying part of it, and I missed all the other stuff until I saw your interview on the High Wire.
That's right.
And my position was always, there is something going on, but it's an unintended consequence of air travel. But it was when I saw your video, Jim, that I all the pieces fell into place.
Well, I'm not trying to tread water here and get into the whole, military side of this, but if for those who want to, you can go to, it's on every page on my website. At the bottom of the page are these PowerPoint presentations I did, and you can see one on my solution. This is the one I did at G. Edward Griffin's conference. This one's about HARP. This is about the water wars and technocrats, but this one is specifically about the difference between military and commercial geoengineering. How it works, why it works, what's the difference? And the difference is pretty damn simple. One is carbon black. One is black carbon. Sounds like the same damn thing. Mm-hmm. It's not. So understanding the difference between them, what is carbon black dust versus soot? Soot is black carbon. Carbon black dust is manufactured.
That's what they use in tires.
Right. That's what they use to make tires black. Oh, by the way, they're using carbon black dust right now in pavements to, basically create your driveway as a battery, because carbon black is inherently electric. So carbon black has military uses. Soot is commercial aviation. Knowing the difference is what matters. So I go into all of the reasons why, how soot self-levitates, Harry Wexler warning about all this and how these fuels, he said it would change, the entire atmosphere, be able to steer the jet stream, all these things. Showing people the different layers of the atmosphere, because most people don't even fucking know them. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere, thermosphere, where they're at, what they're doing. All of the different, you want to talk about HARP? I got HARPs. I have ClimateViewer.org, which is a 3D map of all of the things. All of the laser beams, all of the space weather modification stuff, all that. How these trails have been around forever. This is 1958. Palm Springs, the sun was being completely blocked out. And when they asked the Air Force about it, a month later, Air Force gives Village two choices: live with the trails or move.
Wow.
That's not very politically correct in today's language.
This flies directly in the face of everything that people believe. Yeah. And you'll see that it says weathermodificationhistory.com on here, but I've moved that and combined them all into ClimateViewer.com. So it's all, it redirects now. I just wanted to make it real simple. But if you come down here, I have the interactive timeline, which has all of these references and all of the newspapers so that you can see them. And then at the bottom, the references are all available right there. So you can go see the original, newspapers, where they came from. This is from newspapers.com versus Google News. These are all real. So you can't make this stuff up. But these images are insanely big. Props to Dominic Marama. He did this, not me. They're that big.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to print these out, they're going to look great. But that's the paper. Whenever you read something like that from 1959, you have to stop and scratch your head and go, is it really that new, or has it always been a thing? Because I was a Boy Scout, I graduated high school in 1995, so I remember blue skies. I made a video entirely about that. But that's beside the point. The point is, this has been going on for a very long time, and people don't really understand it. I made an entire PowerPoint presentation about it. As you can see, I'm only on page 14. There's 57 slides just on this PowerPoint that goes through the entire history of it. Oh, and then we immediately flip the script. Military creates clouds on demand. Dr. Florence Van Straten, 1958. The exact same year as Palm Springs jet debacle, and the Air Force told them to fuck off. Navy creation destroys clouds on demand. Ordinary carbon black is used. And the list just goes on and on. What Lyndon Johnson said. Everybody always quotes this one, including Voldemort, at the beginning of every single one of his videos. What he doesn't quote is this one. From space, the masters of infinity would be able to have the power to control the Earth's weather, cause droughts and flood, to change the tides, and raise the levels of the sea? You mean like they're saying global warming's gonna do? Control of space means control of the world? I thought it was just weather control. He who controls the weather controls the world. This is where we graduate from just weather modification to space weather modification. So there's a lot. Two states sued over blocking out the skies. Illinois and New Jersey sued the airline industry in 1970 over blocking out the sun. The difference is, in 1958, they called them vapor trails. In 1970, they called it smoke pollution of the sky. The government will tell the nation's 43 commercial airlines Tuesday they must end pollution of the skies with jet engine smoke. The word chemtrail wasn't invented until 1996-97.
Yeah. And I remember growing up and it was always called a vapor trail.
Right. And vapor trails was, before that, it was vapor trails.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the way it, always went. Carbon black dust and steering hurricanes, weather modification by carbon dust absorption of solar energy. William Gray et al., 1976. Acid rain. Yeah. We don't talk about that anymore. But guess who's making it?
Before.
Huh?
That was all the rage before.
When I was in middle school and high school, acid rain was talked about all the time. Mm-hmm. It's not talked about anymore.
And that actually kind of scared us, because I remember even growing up and we'd collect rain just in little cups, and then we'd go out and drink it, and we were all concerned about sulfur and whatever. Now, after this presentation, I would be more concerned about the metals that are in there. There's no way I'm drinking rainwater anymore.
So this is Dr. Arnold A. Barnes Jr. from the Phillips Lab, Hanscom Air Force Base, saying weather modification using carbon black dust increase cirrus cloud cover. This is from 1997, along with 3 different Freedom of Information Act requests that I have on this. Why? To block out visual satellite and high altitude reconnaissance. So them Chinese people, when they're flying over Area 51, if they can create a bunch of infrared defeating clouds, what are you talking about, Jim? It was right back here. The Russians did it. Spacecast 2020. This is a shout out to the Black Vault for uncovering this Freedom of Information Act request. Previous Russian weather modification efforts redacted. This demonstrated an ability to generate infrared defeating clouds. What does that mean? That means that not just visual satellites, but even infrared can't penetrate these clouds.
Wow.
So whenever they're flying their latest stealth drone, whenever they've got their latest thing out on the tarmac at Area 51 or any place, they can create infrared blocking clouds on demand.
No heat signature then.
Right.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
So when you look at that, and the other thing he says is decrease light level for nighttime operations. And then you get, and they actually have like in the notes, the exact same, he quotes the same stuff that came from the Freedom of Information Act request. This was originally on army.mil. I pulled this from Wayback Machine. So this is real. All the references are available. And I'm clicking on the damn StreamYard screen instead of this screen. You can't make this up. So this is the NATO single fuel concept, and all of it kind of wrapped into one. So status 450 is a anti-static agent. DuPont jet fuel additive number 5. Conversion from JP4 to JP8 begins 1998. The patent for stratospheric Welsbach seating, 1992. 1994, the plus 100 hits additive tests begin. 1995, owning the weather in 2025 was written. 1996, the conversion to JP8 was complete. Whether the slides I just showed you was from the Weather Modification Technologies Symposium, 1997. Also in 97, Edward Teller's geoengineering proposal, which we mentioned earlier. Coincidence? I don't think so. Lawrence Livermore National Lab. October 97, plus 100 additive in 1,000 U.S. Air Force jets. Also, every single NATO country had completed its conversion to JP8. 1997 chemtrail conspiracy starts.
Is that roughly when we started seeing, like, this?
That's when we saw a marked change in the skies. And it's a twofold problem. It's actually the increase of number of flights combined with the background buildup of aerosols led by military flights from NATO countries. Mm-hmm. So because NATO is seeding the sky with very dirty fuels and flights are increasing every single year, and we can get into the actual science. I put this chemtrail science up here, just to be an asshole. But regardless, there's a lot there, and how you can steer hurricanes with carbon black dust. They brag all about it. They had a hurricane modification workshop. We're kind of getting sidetracked now, but regardless, you want to dig into the PowerPoint. I make PowerPoints for contrail control, how 9/11 had something to do with this. This is the plane that they were talking about. A single E3 Sentry AWACS plane was creating that contrail that turned into cirrus clouds that damn near covered all the UK by itself. That is a single plane making all of that.
So, Jim, here's a question too. So we've had 2 significant events in the last 20 years where it affected plane travel. 9/11, where we didn't have planes flying for about 3 days, I think is what it was. And then at the beginning of COVID, we still had cargo planes, but we really had a decrease in passenger planes.
You're missing one, because this was actually during the volcanic eruptions around 2008.
That's right.
The Iceland volcano that grounded all flights in Europe.
I do remember that. That's right too. Yes.
That's where this photo is from.
Okay. Wow.
So that's 3.
Yeah, that's right.
Those are the 3 rare instances where what you would call background information is removed from, the scientific study. If you have too many variables, you can't really isolate something because it's the sky. It's not a lab. They treat it like a freaking lab, but regardless, you need to be able to differentiate between them. So that's why, they got to this point. Jet biofuel enlisted for contrail control. I'm gonna summarize with this, and then we're just gonna chat from here on out, because I brought all that up to bring up this. Where the hell did my where did I bury my
Just look, click them all open. It's fine.
It's somewhere in there, bruh. There it is. So I told you about this is that photo.
Yeah.
With the E3 making autumn clouds. And, I talk about James Haywood only because I'm about to make a video about all the idiots that literally rehashed a UK Met Office video from 11 years ago which surfaced 5 days ago, and they're all saying UK Met Office admits to geoengineering, because the guy in the video is actually James Haywood. And he's the one who said the thing. Anyway, it's nerd stuff. This is where Ulrich Schumann actually said it. This is the slide I saw. And this was about mitigating, e.g., less soot emissions and routing avoid cirrus forming regions. This was 2010. And he came up with this program, the COSIP. Okay? This happened, what I'm about to show you, after the Del Bigtree interview.
Oh, yeah.
I have a Telegram chat, t.me/ClimateViewer chat. You can find all of this, all of my stuff's on connect.climateviewer.com. I'll show it to you in a minute. So I interviewed Dr. Rangasai Halthori. This is the actual interview. He agreed to a written interview because the FAA wouldn't allow him to go on video and with his voice and all that. But I emailed him the questions. He sent back the answers. And that's where he said, we would like to have more, there's that word, more contrail-induced cirrus clouds during the day, none during the night. So then after the thing, that with Del Bigtree, a guy joins my Telegram chat, and he says, you gotta see this. And at the chemtrail the Tennessee chemtrail ban, and the New Hampshire geoengineering ban, and the Rhode Island one, and all of the different laws they've been trying to pass, they keep, basically bringing up the same, they're rehashing the same damn thing over and over again. It's this geoengineering report from the White House. So if you go to the Weather Modification History Interactive Timeline, you can actually see it. I haven't put it on there yet. Damn it. I'm gonna have to add that. That's one of those things. But anyway, the man, egg on face. I swear I thought that was there.
That's okay. Just explain what it was about then.
So the Biden administration basically came out with this thing called the Solar Radiation Modification Research Agenda. And in it, there's actually a link to it right freaking there, but in it, they talk to, about SRM, marine cloud brightening, and cirrus cloud thinning. This is the one that nobody talks about. This is how you make clouds by day, none by night. Cirrus cloud thinning is the idea of melting chemtrails away at nighttime. So Ulrich Lohmann and Blas Gasparini, Ulrich Lohmann's also one of these people who did the studies flying through the clouds and said, hey, these clouds are made of 75% man-made metals. Wow. Mm-hmm. But then she said, a cirrus cloud climate dial. This is the name of the paper. In it, she explains exactly how you could make clouds by day and none by night. This can be achieved if cirrus cloud seeding is limited to high latitude winters or to nighttime seeding. So this is really, now I'm starting to see a connection here. All of this I knew before going on Del Bigtree. Then my boy George shows up in Telegram. He's like, yo, you gotta see this. And he sent me this. And this is from the Royal Aeronautical Society. All right. Not exactly a, conspiracy rag. Let's just put it that way. And it said, could contrails actually help cool the planet? It's right there. I'm not making this stuff up. We're on aerosociety.com. So I'm reading through this, and this part blew my freaking mind. Because I've been saying this whole time, it's not geoengineering, guys, but it might be. Because they've been planning this all along. I just showed you, how Google AI is desperate to avoid contrail forming regions. They want to mitigate the impacts of contrails while telling you, put your chemtrail hat on, you chemtard, if you believe any of this is geoengineering. Still differentiating stratosphere, milky white skies, troposphere, cloud control. So is there a secret agenda for cloud control? This is still the question I'm trying to prove. And at this meeting, the presentation was followed by one Robert Whitfield of Greener by Design Contrail Avoidance Group. This is these guys. Greener by Design Contrail Avoidance Group. When the Contrail Avoidance Group first met, two options for reducing climate impact were on the table. The first was changing cruise altitude to avoid forming evening or nighttime, there's that word again, warming contrails. All in one sentence. Wow. As in figure 2, which I'm about to show you. The second was earlier in the day, deliberately flying into ISSRs, ice supersaturated regions, in order to form contrails to reflect sunlight, i.e. cooling contrails. Seeing the pattern here? Both options have been proposed by Herman Manstein. Herman Manstein works with Ulrich Schumann. They've co-written several papers. I don't expect you to know who these people are. I've read all their papers. And yeah, he proposed that. It emerged that half the group thought both options should be explored, but half the group foresaw political reluctance to consider deliberately forming contrails on the ground it could be considered geoengineering. Consequently, a governance subgroup was formed to consider the sensitivities of this area. Translation. We're going to go look at the fucking internet real quick and see what people think about geoengineering. And if they think that they want to shoot down planes now, we probably shouldn't mention that we're actually doing this and we should just do this. Don't believe me? Look at the slide below, because this is from a separate PDF. This isn't actually on the website. Found this elsewhere. And here is a link to that PDF, because I like to be thorough and give people all the references that I get. So what do they say? And I should probably blow this image up so you guys can see it nice and pretty. Let's go big. Go big or go home. Avoiding warming contrails. And they show contrail region, ice supersaturated region. Well, we would fly and climb up to altitude, but then once we're up at altitude, maybe we'll like go underneath that. And then we'll rapidly go through it. Oh, you're going to see some on-off chemtrail action right there.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's all pipes and pumps, regardless. Over here, creating cooling contrails. Yeah, we're up here, and, you know, if we just keep going straight, we're not going to make any. But it's daytime, and we want to block some sunlight. Why? Carbon credits, carbon offsets.
And who gets that? Is it the airlines or like
the airlines would make money by claiming that we're offsetting our CO2 emissions by intentionally creating cooling contrails.
What?
We're a part of the solution.
It'd be way better than $10 a gallon.
It's our pollution geoengineering solution. But we're also avoiding making contrails that persist into nighttime. We don't want to make cirrus clouds at night because they trap heat. So we've got artificial intelligence and Google on board and all these supercomputers and server racks crunching all the data so that we can use the FAA's AEDT, Aviation Environment Design Tool, to route the flights intentionally into or around to create contrails that turn into cirrus clouds on demand. And they say it with their own mouth. So contrail avoidance group at first meeting split over forming cooling contrails. Is this geoengineering? Decide to sidestep the issue and form a governance subgroup But fuck it. Recent work in the margins suggests cooling contrails are worth investigating. So, like, as they're going, this could be geoengineering. Maybe we should look into the governance issues. It's worth investigating because money. Money is the answer. What is the question?
Work in the margins.
So my question was going to be, so it's actually not the air traffic controller telling them what to do, or is it actually on the plane, the navigation controls are telling them where to go, or is it like a combination of the two? Is it who's actually telling the pilots to fly where they're flying? I guess. So
I actually learned a lot in my 3 hour and 38-minute conversation last night, speaking directly to a pilot, a female pilot. I previously spoke with Graham Hood. He flew for Qantas Airlines in Australia. And during that conversation, you know, he confirmed a lot of what I already knew. And he kind of got a crash course in this because he had Voldemort on his show, and they got into a really heated debate about the fact that planes can't make contrails. So because of that heated debate, you know, he saw me on with the high wire, and he's like, all right, I want to get this guy on here so we could just tie a bow on this, because though I'm a pilot, that's not even what we talk about. They were talking about vaccine mandates and trying to fix problems in Australia, not related to this at all. But people would constantly be, as he put it, there were Christians praying that God strikes these planes down out of the sky.
I saw comments like that.
Yeah.
In 15 years of doing this, I've deleted close to 100, maybe 300 comments of individuals in my YouTube chat, you know, comments saying we should shoot these planes down. We should round up the pilots. They're murdering all of us. And I blame Voldemort and all of the other fear porn pushers directly for that.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for the pilots who are being demonized when, you know, they're doing an essential service. You know what I mean? Like, if you motherfuckers didn't buy airline tickets, they wouldn't have a job, and there wouldn't be any freaking clouds coming out of planes. Fire-breathing metal dragons in the sky would not be making clouds if you weren't buying so much crap from Amazon. Period. Blame yourself on that one. Yeah. So I'm trying, you know, and even when we're talking about weather modification, even when we're talking about HARP, I believe that it is dangerous to dehumanize people, because I've seen what happens in history when that occurs. Whether it's Stalin or Hitler or Mao, if you dehumanize people, then you can justify any action against them. And I see pilots as people with families. And they most certainly do not have a chemtrail switch in their freaking cockpits.
Yeah.
Because I have literally, and I'm not going to say how, because I don't want to get myself in trouble with the authorities, but I have downloaded internal documents and maintenance and flight avionics, and I have dug deeper into the cockpits and fuel systems of Airbus. I'm going to shut up now. I went digging hacker style, and that shit does not exist.
But I saw it on Facebook.
It must be true. At the end of the day, this is the reality of the situation. You have these groups that are trying to greenwash the pollution that has been coming out of planes since the 1950s, making clouds, screwing up people's environment, screwing up my day. I hate seeing it. You hate seeing it. It is a visual problem. As I testified at the EPA, it's a problem for the solar industry. How do you talk out of both sides of your neck, you sons of bitches at Davos, flying there in your private jets, going, we should all transition to sustainable energy. You should get solar panels, but the oil industry makes the jet fuel that makes the clouds that block the sun? That's irony.
You can't write it. You can't write it.
If you're a film producer, I'll write you a script. This shit would be much more shocking than the crap you're writing right now, because you can't make this stuff up. If you look at how the airline industries are structured, the CEOs are making billions, and the pilots are actually incentivized to fly higher because they burn less fuel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And fuel is the number one cost in flying planes, which makes tickets cheaper, which puts more asses in seats, which makes more money on the stock market, which makes the CEO richer. And the pilots themselves are incentivized to fly as cheaply as possible. This particular pilot, I'm not going to name her name because she's going to be, coming on my show very soon. And, then you're going to hear it from the horse's mouth. No, I'm saying she's a horse or anything like that. You know what I'm saying. But I just briefly, and of course I was astounded because she's not like any other pilot I've ever talked to. Most pilots are ignorant on like radiation dosage at altitude.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that too. Yeah.
So like the higher you fly, the more galactic cosmic rays radiation you're
exposed
you're exposed to. So she made the statement that yes, they want you to fly the wire, but she would intentionally take on an extra 2,000 gallons, I don't know if she said pounds or gallons. She would take on extra fuel just so that she could stay below 36,000 feet so that she could limit her radiation dosage. I was like, you're big brain.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I mentioned, and she unprompted mentioned, I mean, people are getting more freaking chemtrails just sitting there when we're on the runway, breathing the fuel in the cabin. And I'm like, do you know that I cannot fly in planes because of aerotoxic syndrome? And she's like, I know exactly what you mean. I've got a airline friend. She's a stewardess, and that's all she talks about, breathing that in. And I'm like, because the air in the cabin actually comes from the high bypass part of the turbofan. The part that's not allegedly burning is just fans. So most of the thrust is just fans blowing air out the back. Voldemort says that's why they don't create contrails. But what's really happening there is when that air gets sucked from that high bypass part of the jet engine, the barium is in the oil and the lubricants that keep the fan spinning around. There's also this thing called the Wigner effect, and there's, basically wear and tear on those aluminum blades. So a lot of the aluminum also comes just from friction eroding the blades themselves. Meanwhile, you're sitting on the runway and everything's just spinning and, burning a little bit of jet fuel. And I'm smelling oil. And I'm sick. When I flew out to Ed Griffin's conference in 2016, I took a train when I went to testify in Washington, D.C., just to be clear. It'd be hypocritical to go bitch about airplanes and take a flight to DC. I took a train, but hey, Ed Griffin, the author of the Creature from Jekyll Island, the definitive book on the Federal Reserve, when he calls you and says, "I'd like you to present, and I'm going to fly you out," you fly out. I got there and I was sick as a dog, running like 104 degree temperature. Within less than 24 hours of getting off the plane, I did my entire presentation, which is one of those presentations I just showed you, while running 104 temperature. I got back on the plane. I flew home. I had pneumonia for like a month.
Wow.
Same thing happened in 2018. I got an Airbnb for the week. I flew out to the American Meteorological Society, went to the 21st annual conference on planet and inadvertent weather modification, got there, 103 temperature, sweating bullets, had a suit on with an Emmy award-winning videographer there. And I'm doing, got the microphone in my hand. I'm interviewing Raytheon, the United States Naval Research Lab, about HARP, and, William Cotton, who was part of Project Storm Fury. You steered them hurricanes, William Cotton. What's up? You're the guy who said, hey, let's dope jet fuel by adding sulfur to the jet fuel so that we could geoengineer. All while sweating bullets. So I have not flown since those two trips. And, we had all this conversation about it. But what her point was that they incentivize the pilots to fly higher. And we've already gone through, where is that dividing line between the troposphere and the stratosphere?
Yeah.
So when they're incentivizing pilots to fly higher, they're also doing contrail avoidance. And they're saving on gas because there's less resistance, because there's less water vapor.
Yeah.
The video intro you showed had a photo, and that photo had a rainbow coming off the back of the plane.
Contrail.
That is an aerodynamic contrail. That's the proper term for it. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing that if you ever watched an F-16, Fighting Falcon military jet, if you watch it, you can Google it, F-16 aerodynamic contrail, and you'll see these contrails that form over the wing. And that's due to pressure. That's just due to already atmospheric conditions and pressure. So that's why you're seeing in some cases that there's such ice super like that.
Yeah. Wow.
That's not the freaking engines, bro. That's an aerodynamic contrail. And all of that's explaining.
Yeah.
You may not want to believe this. You may want to go, he's a shill for the Illuminati. He's a paid puppet and all that. I want to tell you guys straight up. My address is on the bottom of my fucking website. You can go slap it into Google Earth and see my double wide trailer. And it is the finest double wide trailer ever paid for by the Illuminati. I could promise you that. I am not a rich man. I am a hardworking Southern guy. I consider myself a gentleman, unless you want to get into a heated debate, and then I'm going to drop an F-bomb because I used to be a corrections officer and I like fighting, whether it's with words or fists and feet. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, there's my address. Go Google it. he's really gonna go there, bro. Turn on the satellite view. All right, go down the street. Go down the street. I'll show you. Keep going.
This is your street.
Yeah. All right, stop. Now look to the right. Other way.
Other right.
You went too far. Back up a little bit. That's my double wide.
Okay.
In fact, Google it, because I actually know that I know the Google car, like what its schedule is, and they had me on there double barrel middle finger, and had to blur me out of the photo for a while there. But like I said, you can say that I'm saying all these things because I'm paid to say it or whatever. That's just you coping. So if you need a real heavy dose of copium after watching this, you're not being open-minded and honest with yourself. I'm not here to convince you I'm right. In fact, I'm going to tell you that the longer I do this, the more questions I have than answers.
Yeah.
That's just the truth of the matter. if you're talking about cloud seeding or even ionospheric heaters like HARP, things like that, I could give you very, very definitive answers on these things because there's no wiggle room on these things. Cloud seeding does not work. They're snake oil salesmen. I can prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt, show you all the peer-reviewed journals and all the people who wasted their money only to go on to say this shit does not work. So it is gambling with the weather.
The insurance companies that are seeding for hail, that doesn't work?
No. Want me to prove it? I'll prove it right now.
Being in Calgary and being in Alberta, we get hail.
The Alberta Hail Project's been going on for decades.
Yeah.
And it's a $1 billion industry.
If you go, well, then you should show this to your MPs. If you go to everything on my website, it's right under pages. So if you just click pages,
I know what I'm doing for the next week is just going on ClimateViewer.
So, and I should show you guys this. This is the newspaper vault, and this is Dominic Marama, my homeboy from Canada, just so we're clear. And these are all the newspaper articles, just to give you an idea.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you start going through these, you can literally just click on them. I love this one. This is just great. Producing rain with X-rays, 1919. And you can just flip through them. Hail cannons. Just flip through it.
A lot of these are patented too, by the way.
Yeah. Electrified sand coming out of a biplane for weather modification purposes. You just can't make this shit up.
I think that one was actually in that self-proclaimed climate alarmist Wigington's intro to the dimming, that biplane method.
Oh, I think it is.
Yeah, it is. He dude, I called the dimming the dumbing, and I've got an ongoing bet with my audience that they keep like pushing me to do like a 4-part, because when I do a reaction, I really do a reaction to like every word, every picture, and how it's been misused, and go show you, hey, that's a, like he uses this one where they have the smoke generators on the plane tips, and he's like, look at this, that's clearly not a jet engine, dude. That's a wake vortex test, like at Dryden Air Force Base. Like, you can go, here's the original thing from Dryden Air Force Base doing a wing vortex test, and you've literally shown it in 100 videos. It's on the front page of your fucking website. Like, anybody who just looks it up is going to immediately go, you're 100% full of shit. But anyway, back to this. So if you go to weather modification, there's 2 types, chemical and electrical weather modification. Basically, cloud ionization, lasers. I put all of them together in a single image, because I like doing images, and that's not the full size image. Why is that there? History. There, that's the full size one. So this is all of the weather modification technologies in one picture. Chemtrails happens to be just one of them. Okay, it's number 9, and it's under contrail and do serious. 8, 9, and 10, I literally put a red flag on it saying considered inadvertent, accidental, or pollution unless intentional.
Yeah.
And that's the problem, is proving intent. I just talked to you about all these plans to make clouds by day and none by night. Biofuels for contrail control. All of these things that they're talking about prove they're doing them. Because all of the biofuel tests that I've heard of, they've stopped doing them. Why? They failed miserably. Then there's the whole thing about, what's called flame contamination. If you actually mix regular jet fuel with biofuels, there's pipes that run underneath the airport, it creates something called fatty acid methyl ester. It causes engine flame outs. You want a plane falling out of the sky? Big issue. Anyway, so ionospheric heaters, sounding rockets, they work hand in hand. These are chemtrails from space. They also do them on satellites like CRES and Arecibo. Lasers, They can be used to make rainfall. They can also be used to steer lightning bolts, cloud seeding, cloud ionizers, all of these things. That's the big picture. The problem with cloud seeding, though, is, and I made a special section in here because I told you I like to do technology terminology. Give people the basics. That's what these pages are about. Everything else beyond that's, really getting into the weeds. Like all the official government projects, like you can actually see names and dates of who paid for it, where, when, and why. But does it work? These are the most damning comments you'll ever hear from the scientific community. And it really got kicked off by the National Research Council in 2003. And they basically said, although 40 years has passed since the last time we really assessed cloud seeding, the shit still doesn't work. Which really pissed off the Weather Modification Association, who had a response to the National Research Council's report titled Critical Issues in Weather Modification Research. They got big mad. But it was concluded that so far, tests conducted so far have not yet provided either statistical or physical evidence required to establish the seeding concepts have been scientifically proven. Here's where it gets worse. The change in timing, blah, 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 will trigger successive development of more vigorous second, third, and fourth generation cells than those from unseeded clouds. Oh, it doesn't really make it rain more, but if you seed a cloud as it travels further away, it gets more dangerous? That's bad. And that's from Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society in 2003, same year. It just gets worse for them and worse for them. Edwards Aquifer out of Texas. There was evidence that cloud seeding could actually decrease rainfall by accident. The executive summary from the World Meteorological Statement on Weather Modification. This is from the World Meteorological Society expert team on weather modification research. This is Phil Rasmussen and Rolf Jabrintes and a bunch of all these dudes from NCAR, and there's scientists from all over the world. They basically said that purposeful augmentation of rain precipitation, reduction of hail damage, dispersion of fog, and other types of clouds of storm modification by cloud seeding are developing technologies which are still striving to achieve a sound scientific foundation. 2010. Cloud seeding was invented in 1946 at the General Electric labs. This is the point I try to make to people. There's no such thing as weather control. There is weather modification. You can change it. Mm-hmm. You cannot control it. Why? The answer comes right down here. So to prove all these people wrong, the government actually funded U.S. Bureau of Reclamation and a whole bunch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture, U.S. Department of Commerce, and a bunch of people from NCAR and UCAR got together and they did what's called the Wyoming Weather Modification Pilot Program. We're going to prove all these motherfuckers wrong. We know this is science. Cloud seeding produced a 3% increase in precipitation with a 28% probability this result happened by chance.
By chance.
Some good results.
That's really the butterfly effect right there. It's like,
it is.
Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but
most scientists wouldn't accept that level of uncertainty, says Breed, part of the National Corporation for Atmospheric Research team that analyzed the results. But for water managers in drought-prone areas, it's a different story. If you say, I'm 70% confident that this will have an impact, well, a lot of them will think, that's not too bad. Because the bottom line is, if you're that desperate for water, you'll throw money at it.
Yeah.
And I'll make it rain on you, you know, just like, you know, the rappers be saying, I'll make it rain on you. Well, they make it rain on these weather modification snake oil salesmen and pray that they can make it rain on them. There's no science there. They do not know what they're doing. Why? Because geoengineering and weather modification are considered outside of the scope of control theory. And this is from a paper called On the Possible Use of Geophysical Cybernetics and Climate Manipulation, Geoengineering and Weather Modification 2015. It's chaos theory. It is a very chaotic system. We do not understand all the chemical processes going on. Click that Darren Farrell comment. Click that. Jim has been. I honestly believe that you're fucking. That's sarcasm. Like, that's sarcasm. I'm not the one saying this. I'm literally. Do you not know how to read a fucking MLA reference, or are you that dumb?
For the people that are listening to it and not actually watching this, it's Jim is being paid to say that they don't control the weather.
Is the comment?
Yeah. Darren has got to be trolling, and I appreciate a good troll.
Did you get one of those?
I fucking heard you say it yourself. You cannot control the weather. Yo, you dumb. All right, you dumb. You don't know. You don't know. And Alex, hey, Darren, saying mouth over there. I'm gonna tell you like this, bruh. I'm gonna extend the same offer to you that I extended to every scientist, every person on the planet. You believe you know what the fuck you're talking about? I will gladly have you on my YouTube and you prove me wrong. I'll give you all the time you need to do to gather your pictures and help your mama draw a Crayola fucking schematic of whatever you need, but you don't have the balls to do what I do. You definitely don't have the balls to do what I do and put my name, address, and phone number on my website.
That's true too.
Very few people have those balls. So watch your mouth. Anyway, I didn't say it. These people said it. And this is the icing on the cake, because this is from 2020 in Israel. Although this study focuses only on 3 cases, the results are a fundamental step towards that's the next one. Understanding cloud seeding efficacy that for over half a century has been unanswered question for water managers wishing to use these technologies. Quantifying snowfall from orographic cloud seeding, proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. See also, cloud seeding really does work, but only only enough to make snow to dust your eyelashes. Burn. Oh, burn. And then this is the icing on the cake. This is the most recent one. This is 2023. The Israel 4 experiment was stopped a year earlier than planned because the result was disappointing. A 1.8% increase with a 95% confidence interval of blah, blah, blah. Yeah. These results led to the decision by the Israel Water Authority to stop operational clouding seeding, because we're literally throwing money at the problem and it's not working. Mm-hmm. By the way, they use silver to do this, silver iodide, and that's there's 2 types. The other one being hygroscopic. I'm having a brain fart because I so want to like choke the life out of Darren's stupid ass in chat right now. I get triggered easy, bro. I want to fight.
It happens all the time, Jim. But we're fighting people's feelings.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
Bro is butthurt right now, but this Irving Langmuir literally invented cloud seeding. Irving Langmuir, Bernard Vonnegut, and Vincent Schaefer in 1946. And he said, in the amount of energy liberated, the effect of 30 milligrams of silver iodide under optimum conditions equals that of one atomic bomb. Because we don't understand how much energy is in the system above us, and how these chemical changes, how much energy is actually liberated, and how that has, as you mentioned earlier, a butterfly effect on the greater system. And the butterfly effect comes from a paper that basically posited, does a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil create tornadoes in Texas? And that is our atmosphere. There is no control. The same Irving Langmuir or Vincent Schaefer here basically got pretty upset because cloud seeding cause of U.S. floods. This is from 1961. And Bernard Vonnegut also, or Vincent Schaefer, Irving Langmuir, the one I just mentioned. Dr. Irving Langmuir, Nobel Prize winner, said an Air Force test on a tornado off the eastern coast, 1947, may have turned the twister off its course and pushed it into Savannah, Georgia. This was called Operation Cirrus. So, literally 11 months after they invented cloud seeding, they went out and dumped a bunch of silver iodide and dry ice into a tropical cyclone, which turned into Hurricane Beulah, which blew in, changed directions, and then slammed into Georgia, doing millions of dollars of damage, killing like 3 people. But he goes on and he says, he declared that he thinks that, and he insisted for a long time, that a silver iodide generator operating at Alamogordo, New Mexico, under Project Cirrus caused steady downpours which drowned the Missouri Valley 3 years ago. Quote, we had been seeding for some time and the storms kept getting bigger and better. I told them, the Armed Forces heads administering the project, that I felt we ought to stop seeding as the rains in Missouri Valley kept falling. But the administrator of the project was on vacation at the time. No one would take responsibility for ordering the seeding stop. Finally, I told them we must stop. Things are getting serious. We stopped on July 2nd. On July 7th, the flood just about devastated Omaha. If we had stopped our generators 2 weeks earlier, Langmuir said, the Missouri Valley floods would not have happened. So, to be clear, can you modify the weather? Can you make changes in the weather? You're damn right. Can you finitely control it? Yeah. This is the part that the dumbass in chat doesn't get. The difference between control and modification. Modification. Redneck comes at you like this. Control. Quick snap, punch. Quick snap, punch. Do you have control? Do you have form when you're lifting weights, or do you just throw it up there? Control versus effort. Effort, they got plenty of effort. They know when it's going to rain. They sprinkle their fairy dust, and then they claim, if the results are good, they claim they did it. If the results are bad, they go, that was God, that was climate change. We had nothing to do with it. Why? Because the Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1972, you guys have a similar Weather Modification Reporting Act of 1985 in Canada. Those reports are not made public in a timely fashion, and they're only required to give broad generalizations of when they're going to be doing their projects. An example would be the Idaho Power Company has to say, we're turning on our ground-based cloud seeding generators in October, and we're going to shut them off in March. And we're going to seed 18,000 square kilometers. Yeah. And let him do his thing. I don't care. Like, bro, sticks and stones will break my bones, but you trolling me does not hurt me. And you can email me and come on my show. Like, I will literally just annihilate you with your own words and mock you the whole time. I have no problem with that. I worked in prisons with murderer Hawaiians, 400-pound Hawaiian versus 180-pound Jim Lee. I won all fucking day. And their words didn't hurt me. Yours certainly aren't either. So this whole, when you tell people there's no such thing as weather control, it's like telling them, fucking Santa Claus is your parents, right? Because they want to believe. They want to believe the NEXRAD radars are controlling all the weather. They want to believe that HARP is steering the jet stream. They want to so badly believe that there are people who can actually control the weather. But how stupid is that to want to believe that? When in reality, we can't build a fucking car that lasts more than 10 years without having to have the computers ripped out of it or the air conditioner catch on fire or dry, you get the point. It's engineering. That's why they literally changed from geoengineering to climate engineering, because geo means earth, climate, that's what we're trying to engineer. Let's not call it geoengineering. Let's call it climate engineering. And then the guy who wrote this book, Fixing the Sky, The Checkered History of Weather Modification, James Roger Fleming, who I interviewed at the Weather Modification Conference, fan of his. This is actually our Weather Modification History logo. It comes from the Collier's 1955 magazine. He was like, you stole your logo from my book. And I was like, you stole your book cover from the 1955 Collier's magazine. He's like, touche. Anyway, he came up with the idea at this meeting that the CIA partially funded to rebrand it from climate engineering to climate intervention. Why? Because engineering is man-made, and man-made things break. And do we really want to break the sky? So this is all about perception management. This is about mind control through the use of words. We have now come full circle back to where we started. Geoengineering, climate engineering, climate intervention. One crazy motherfucker literally tried to rebrand it climate restoration. That didn't stick. Climate intervention kind of stuck. Not really. I get Google alerts. To this day, they cannot get out from under the word geoengineering. It's stuck. It's now moved to just solar geoengineering. It's just simpler than saying solar radiation modification or solar radiation management. We'll just call it solar geoengineering. Fuck it. Makes it easier to say. So they're always changing terms. Another really good example, and I'll leave you with this about how this is all about words. It is right here, and I'm not even going to bring it up on the screen. I'm just going to read it to you because I know we're getting a little long. It depends on how long you guys want to talk, because I'm a talker. I'll do this all damn night. You're gonna have to cut me off.
It is absolutely fascinating, and you're answering. There are questions coming up, and you're answering them. Well, actually, you haven't even looked at the questions, I'm sure, and you're answering them because it's just that's.
I've heard all this shit 100 times. I've been doing this 15 years. Like, there is not a question you can ask me that I have not heard 100 times. Yeah. But the very first section on my climateviewer.com/Cirrus Clouds Matter, the very first question in my frequently asked question page is this: how language controls the chemtrail debate. If you remove all slave speak from the debate, chemtrails and contrails are both terms referring to clouds made by jet aircraft. I choose to use the term contrail while talking to scientists because using the word chemtrail may cause them to discount the value of my words. I choose to use the term chemtrail when engaging with the public because using the word contrail tends to get you labeled as a debunker and may cause them to discount the value of my words. Perception. Both chemtrails and contrails are high-level descriptors, but let's be real. Here's all the fucking terms for the same thing.
Yeah.
Persistent contrails, spreading contrails, contrail cirrus, contrail-induced cirrus, contrail-induced cloudiness, aviation-induced cloudiness, aviation-induced cirrus, induced cirrus cloudiness, man-made clouds, artificial clouds, and, by the way, Jim Lee calls them plain farts. So these are all terms, and I didn't come up with these. You know where I got these from? Doing this. I go to scholar.google.com. I type this in, and what do I get? I get a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
Aviation-induced cloudiness. And I just started doing a count of what the result numbers were for each of these. Like if I literally do this and you put it in quotes, this is the most commonly used one, is cirrus. There's 427 pages, peer-reviewed journal entries just on that. And that's not including ones that have like hyphens and shit. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I had the numbers on it at one time, and I was comparing geoengineering versus climate engineering versus climate intervention. And you can see just by looking at the numbers, geoengineering, there's 90,000 results. Okay. If you look at climate engineering, 5.5 million.
Wow. Yeah.
If you look up climate intervention, again, 5.1 million. Isn't that interesting? There's only 90,000 versus almost 5 million, because now we're starting to get into differentiation. If you throw the quotes around it, you get more accurate.
Oh, yeah.
5,000. Same thing with the climate engineering.
Well, Jim, at the risk of going on to yet another hour of conversation, my question to you would be, so you've shown us what the problems are, basically how geoengineering can be, and you've gone through the whole gamut of that terminology. What can we do, or what can we present to our governments, if that's who we're going to present this to stop this, or to have some mitigation in it, reduce it? Is there anything that we can possibly do for that? Or is it just, it's so far down that no matter what, there's so many levels involved, we would have to go back right to square one in terms of airline travel?
There's something that has to happen first. People need to be educated, because politicians don't do anything unless they feel that that's the way the wind's blowing.
That is
right. True. So politicians are famous for kicking the can down the road. Our multi, what is it? Trillions of dollars of debt. Yeah. Is a perfect example of that. At the end of the day, like here in America, the states are trying to pass these geoengineering bans. There's a fundamental flaw with that. In America, there is something called the FAA Act, the Federal Aviation Act. And what it basically says is that states shall not impede interstate commerce. And that gives the sole discretion to the FAA to regulate planes flying in the sky. So even though Tennessee banned them geoengineerings, what are they going to do about it? And I pointed this out, and of course a lot of people were like, why are you pissing in the Cheerios? We this is a good thing, and I'm all for banning geoengineering. I think that geoengineering research should be banned, because it's much like the Oppenheimer problem. Oppenheimer said, just like David Key said, we thought that building the bomb would save more lives than it took. That's why we did it.
And then he said, I am become death.
Yeah. You know, that old Hindu book. Suddenly, when it went poof, we all went, oh, fuck, what have we made? Now, the same thing is true with geoengineering. The people who are researching all of these different machinations for, you know, hoses to the sky, to self-propelled automated drone systems to deliver chemicals to the sky, to David Key's latest idea of using G500 Gulfstreams, private jets, G500 or G600, 14 of these planes, to the CIA having its own airline, which more than likely is geoengineering because they've considered climate change a national security threat. When you consider all these things, what is Tennessee really going to do about it?
Mm-hmm.
They have no control over it. It's not like the governor of Tennessee can go, hey, Tennessee National Guard, go up there and get that plane and arrest them for them chemtrails and make them land. And even if they did, let's pretend they did, they're going to pull them over. And I'm just, the comedy side of my head just immediately sees us like, you know, something off of Comedy Central or a good YouTube channel, better than mine. You know, pulls over the plane, says UPS on the tail fin, like, we know that you were secretly geoengineering our skies and it's illegal in Tennessee. And what is your intention? Brother, I was trying to get these Amazon packages from Florida up to New York. But we saw the lines coming out of your plane and we know that you were intentionally geoengineering. You were spraying us like bugs and that's illegal in this state. Y'all are free to look through the plane, but I'm telling you, man, I don't have no switches up here. And if I'm late, y'all gonna have to call my damn boss. Because, you know, Amazon got a 2-day delivery. This is all Prime. Everything in the back of this plane is Prime. Right. You know what I'm saying? And Prime don't happen on roadways, motherfuckers. So if you don't understand that part, anyway, it just seems like an outrageously funny comedy skit. Mm-hmm. If you try to play out what would happen if somebody tried to enforce that law.
Cherry Blueberry behind a 777. But there's more comedy here, Jim. There's more comedy. So your troll there was back under a different name, accusing you of blocking him. Of course, he's wrong again because it's me blocked.
I can't control their StreamYard, dude. I'm a pretty good hacker, but I can't do that. Like you guys see my hands. Like I'm not like this the whole time. I'm going.
There's more though. There's people in the comments and they're like, you know, no, I believe Dane Wigington and I follow him and it's much more credible. That stuff that I saw on the dimming and at geoengineeringwatch.org it was comedy to me. I watched the dimming and I remember feeling for the first 30 seconds, I was like looking at these patents and this creepy music like we talked about before. And I thought, man, am I wrong? Is this really happening? Because I was feeling something that Dane's production was making me feel until I bothered to look into what he was presenting, and it was all bullshit.
That's a fear response.
Yeah. It was
that's him response. Intentionally. All right, so you have to understand how the human brain works. Right brain, emotion. Left brain, logic. Interesting thing about the right brain, it runs about 50 times faster than the left brain. Why? Because fight or flight. Because if you see a bear, you better be able to like be scared of that fucking bear and run. So because our emotional response to things happens much quicker and it takes much more time for you to be able to gain control of your emotions. I learned this, you know, the hard way. You know, I had an abusive father. I'm just being real with you. Like, I had an abusive father, physically beat the shit out of me. Until that day where, 12 years old, I grabbed a pool stick and I settled the score. And from that day forward, I realized that emotional manipulation is a way to make somebody paralyzed. And that in fighting, you can get into a person's head and make them unable to fight simply by emotionally manipulating them. I'm going to say something really controversial. And I've had many talks with my hometown, Sumter, South Carolina, 60% black people. They really don't like being called the N-word. Mm-hmm. And they really suck at fighting after being called the N-word. This was the fundamental bedrock of me understanding slave speak before ever reading slave speak. Now that I'm an adult and I'm more measured in my, control of my emotions, because at the time I was a abused child who was on alcohol, doing drugs, getting in fights all the time. Anybody I saw as a bully, I would get in a fight with. As I became an adult, I started to see why I did the things I did, how I used the same emotional manipulation techniques that my father had used on me and my grandmother. And then I realized that this is something that I have to be able to control, because now I'm literally working in a prison with inmates that are 300 pounds larger than me. And they're trying to use those same manipulation techniques on me to get me to fight them. And they know that I'm a martial artist because they've seen, you know what I mean? I've been doing martial arts since I was 12. So they're literally going, man, let's spar in the laundry room. Come on, we'll just go to the laundry room real quick. There were 7 guys there who were Golden Gloves Muay Thai boxers from Halava. So they were like state champions. And they weren't the smaller of the, Hawaiians, but they were really, really fast. And they would always be trying to goad me into getting into a fight. The thing I learned, though, is that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Most people still to this day don't understand that. That, like, even though you try to emotionally manipulate somebody, that you have to give your power to that person in order for that to happen. I was at a black barbershop here in town, and I heard one of the barbers, basically say, because those people are always trying to keep us down. And I got into a very deep philosophical conversation. I was the only white guy in the building, of course. And I said, can we be real? Those people don't differentiate between you and me, because to them, we are all N-words. Mm-hmm. And first of all, the shock set in that I had said the N-word, hard R. And then we got into this, conversation. I said very simply to them, if I call you the N-word and you feel an emotional response that says, I want to physically hit this guy, understand, I own you. That means I have control over you. I say a word, you do what I say. And that, you should have seen the look on everybody's faces. I've had this conversation. I was asked to come by one of the, ironically, was, gay black man who was one of the barbers. He was the one cutting my hair. Like, I'd, never been to a black barber. They were like shaving all this shit. And I was like, this is fucking epic, man. This dude did the best haircut I've ever had in my life. At the end of it, he said, I would really like for you to come to my church and talk about what you just told us. And I said, you have to understand that, this is what we call the mental plantation. Or as one of my favorite rappers, Immortal Technique, said, the annihilation of mental colonization. Not allowing people to use slave speak to control you. when I was talking to the pilot last night, I said something that really just like made her just kind of like, yeah, it's like she'd got punched. You could literally hear it over the phone. I said, honestly, in my opinion, I believe the chemtrail conspiracy was made up by the airline industry. And she goes, why? I said, because it's so much easier to deflect from your problems when everybody's busy fighting a straw man.
Yeah.
Bingo.
That is true. Yeah, you're right.
Than actually focusing on the pollution. Because if you say graphene, I can make your fear porn videos. I mean, I could partake. I could be just as dirty and manipulative as Dane Wigington. Why? I understand the process. Let me paint a picture for you. Let me channel my inner Alex Jones. Because what you guys don't understand is that the goddamn Illuminati are out there pumping graphene out of the back of all these planes every single day. And whether you see a chemtrail or a contrail doesn't matter. That graphene's raining on you. It's killing you. It's turning the frogs gay. It's doing all these things. It is poison. They are poisoning everybody on the planet. I'm going to change InfoWars to Poison Planet. You guys don't understand how scary this really is, and they know what they're doing. They've done the studies. Here's the freaking pictures. And I could show you the pictures right now of the graphene on there. That's actually true. But nobody wants to actually look into it. Why? They're looking for fucking nanobots and Morgellons and all of these other fairy tale stories. Now, I'm not saying that those fairy tale stories might not be true, because guess what? Every time I look deep enough into a conspiracy, 5 years later, it comes true. Yeah. We have to get new conspiracy theories because all of the other ones have, come true. But this is provable. And that's where I go. When I look at this, I go with, this is what I can prove. I can prove this in a court of law. There's aluminum in the chemtrails, barium, etc. Correct.
We talked about that.
The jet exhaust contains jet fuel, has aluminum, barium, strontium, vanadium, molybdenum, calcium, iron, nickel, lead. The list goes on. It's all right there. You just have to look at it. And whether you're impressed or not, it doesn't matter. Be proud of Tennessee banning chemtrails. It's smoke and fucking mirrors. Mm-hmm. It does not make a difference. To make a difference in this, it has to be handled at a federal level, because they're the ones with the jurisdiction to actually do this. The most simple version in America is the EPA was created because of the Clean Air Act. And the Clean Air Act was a direct result of calls for regulation of pollution that endangers public health. The EPA has a air quality network, which only measures chemicals down to a particulate matter, PM 2.5, which is 2.5 microns. 1 micron is 1,000 nanometers. We're talking about particles that range from 1 to 10 nanometers. There isn't an instrument network on the planet that can test for these chemicals in the air, in the rain. Mm-hmm. Nobody's even looking into it.
And they don't want to look into it.
Because money, because lobbyists, because if you regulate these planes doing this pollution, I showed you earlier, where are all the private jets? They're flying in the stratosphere.
Yes, they are.
Above all the flyover country and all the rednecks riding in coach at 36 to 40,000 feet. They're up there at 45,000 feet cruising strong. So the Davos crowd And the rich elites don't want anybody fucking with their private jets. That's one group. Then you've got the billionaire CEOs of all the individual carriers, American, Southwest, JetBlue, United Arab Emirates. The list goes on and on and on. All of them have a stake in it. The FAA, which its entire goal is to promote air travel. That's their goal. So,
and they're funded by industry.
And they're funded by the same industry so they won't regulate the industry. And the EPA is a feckless group of do-nothings. They're so useless that you might as well disband them at this point because they don't serve any purpose. The last thing they did of any substantial note was ban Berkey water filters because they claimed they were a pesticide because they had silver in them. Meanwhile, I've been drinking out of a Berkey water filter for the last 7 years because it's the best damn water filters I could get. That's our EPA. Mm-hmm. So when people ask, what's the solution? We came up with some pretty unique ideas last night, me and this female pilot. Yeah. It's going to take some creative ingenuity. I was approached by Renette Senham, who Save Our Skies, if you guys want to look her up. And she originally had done a crowdfunding to sue for the geoengineering, sue the geoengineers, sue the chemtrail people. Until I talked to her lawyer, and I explained to her what I've just explained to you guys. And of course, she too was a Dane Wigington. Thank you for putting that up there. SaveOurSkies.org. And there's, Renette created it. I'm, contribute to it. My friend Jeff, he's a former Navy meteorologist. If you join my Telegram chat, you'll see him there. He will diagnose your sky. Anytime you want to know about it, he'll be there to, in chat to let you know all about it. But basically, when I talked to their lawyer, she was one of the Dane Wigington crowd. She was on that tip. Both of them were, in fact, on that tip. And after that, initial conversation, they both were sitting there shocked with their jaw on the floor going, nah, this is kind of hard to believe. Like, you just literally destroyed everything that we set this lawsuit up to deal with. And you're telling us that we would have to sue the entire FAA, NATO, and the International Civil Aviation Organization, the International Pilots Association. Do you realize the kind of money these people have? We're talking 10 years. From the time you file that paper to the time, if you're lucky enough to weather the storm of cash flow, you maybe a decade later see a day in court. Yeah. And even then, they'll probably just go, we're going to need to stay so that we can do more study on the claims that they're now making based on, we got to review all this peer-reviewed journal entry bullshit that their staff just shoved on our desk. We're going to need more time. 5 years later, if you're not broke by then, you would never win. So you have to think about this realistically. I think that the best way to fight this is to use other people's money. So, trying to be the conniving, manipulative, shit starter that I am, what if I went to all of, there's got to be a convention, like a group of solar industry tycoons, the people that own all the companies making all these solar panels, and gathered them together and said, that the planes are making the clouds that are blocking the sunlight that you're trying to make money off of? They're literally taking money out of your pocket. Why don't you guys do something about it? They got a bunch of money. What about say cloud seeding, for example? All along the Rocky Mountains, they're doing cloud seeding. They make artificial snow all winter long. Snowpack augmentation is what they call it. Could be making extra snow? Probably not. Who knows? It's gambling with the weather. Regardless, if they get lucky and or doesn't really matter if they did it or not. Let's be real. They paid money to put artificial snow on the mountain. When you get to springtime and the state that neighbors Colorado is flooded because they melt in the spring, and you get the attorney general from that state and you explain to them in graphic detail who paid for that weather modification, what their purpose was, create artificial snow on top of mountain, artificial snow on top of mountain, melted and flooded your state. Insurance companies, state governments, their attorney generals have all the tax money in the world to sue these motherfuckers into oblivion. I'm all about using other people's money. I started this show by saying, I don't give a fuck what the public thinks anymore. Why? Because I wanted to make myself armed and dangerous so that if I get the opportunity to talk to someone like an attorney general, to talk to somebody who is an industry representative that has those kinds of funds, to be able to say, beyond a shadow of a doubt, you will win this case, and I'm going to arm you to the fucking teeth so that you do. Because if you win, we win. That's the solution moving forward. We have some really sneaky things planned to deal with the airline industry. But I don't want to show my cards. Because this, I can't even say it without, even hinting at it. But let's just say there's a group of concerned citizens who operate planes who could be our biggest help ever because they're tired of getting threatened with death because they're got chemtrail switches. Yes, pilots have a stake in this game too. The average pilot's making like $400,000 a year. Keep that in mind. So these pilots all have a group. And if they realize that they're being massively exposed to radiation, which is going to increase their chances of cancer and dying early because the airlines want to fly cheaper to make an extra buck, and they're doing it, which is geoengineering, because when they fly in the stratosphere, all that's ending up at 18 kilometers. Now we're talking about another very large group who has a union, who has the possibility of breaking the balls of an airline industry. You have to think very creatively about how to deal with these problems. And if anybody wasn't paying attention during the Donald Trump lawfare case that just happened in, New York, the legal system is rigged. I mean, it's just rigged, period. We have to figure out very interesting new ways to deal with these problems. And if you think just as expensive and as rich as the airline industry is, the climate change, climate cultists, technocrats that want to run the entire globe based on a CO2 narrative, there's trillions of dollars. When you're talking about like Vanguard and BlackRock and all the money they've invested in these sustainable projects, which are now coming up to, they realize that they've completely been lying on their books to get a lower APR. This whole thing's crumbling too. It's a new, carbon bubble that nobody wants to talk about. There's a lot of moving pieces going on right now. And I'm trying to go, what's the most realistic way that I can digest what's going on, regurgitate it so that people can get it, while going, look, I can't fucking help you, Darren. You are hardwired, fear porn addicted, and you simply don't have an open mind. So I learned this working. Now, just so full disclosure, Jim Illuminati guy carries a pistol and works in a government building. That's what I do for a living. So I heard this judge, and we were having a discussion, like got into a discussion similar to what we're having here. And he said, really bright prosecutor was having a discussion with me. He says, I don't get it, Judge. I had all the evidence. I laid out my case perfectly. I had them dead to rights. My closing argument was flawless. How did it come back not guilty? And the judge said to him, your first mistake was trying to convince people who already had their minds made up. And that's why, and I don't literally mean fuck the public. That's me being antagonistic. It's intentional. I want to piss you off. Prove me wrong. All that's going to happen is you're going to realize I'm right. You need to be shook up. Hate to quote Kevin Spacey, pedophile, but these days you have to hit people over the head with a hammer from the movie Seven.
That's right. Yeah.
It's true. You can't just wake people up with a 2-hour documentary called The Dumbing that is filled with misappropriated images and fake ass whistleblowers. Kristen Megan, she, came out of nowhere. She's like, I was seeing all these chemicals and they had missing material safety data sheets. And that was a red flag for me. And I'm like, yo, Kristen, talk to her on Facebook. I'm like, hey, I got all those material safety data sheets you were looking for. Like, I can show you them all. You want to see what's in status 450, dinyl naphthalene sulfonic acid? It's like 50% sulfur. It's what them geoengineers be wanting to do. It's called a static dissipator. I got that. And she goes, you're cute. The fuck is going on here? You were just on InfoWars. You're supposed to be an activist. Like you said, this is like the most important thing in the world. And I'm telling you, like, I have the things and you're hitting on me. I was like, bitch, I'm married. She was like, what does that matter? I was like, you have got to be shitting me. Everybody I have met in this industry, and by industry, I mean the chemtrail fear porn industry, are the fakest people.
Wow. Yeah.
J. Marvin Herndon wrote the whole coal fly ash series of papers. That idea was made up by a dude named the Harp Report on YouTube. Another dude who had no name, no face, just a voice. He came up with Project Indigo Skyfold. The story goes like this. A friend of mine knows a pilot who told him Indigo Skyfold. I heard that shit for literally, I heard it last week. Somebody was like, it's called Project Indigo Skyfold. I'm like, do you know who fucking made that up? The same guy, the Harp Report, made up the chemtrails are coal fly ash and out of Tinker Air Force Base. Oh, wait, that's the same place Kristen Megan said was the last place she worked, was Tinker Air Force Base. That's a hell of a coincidence. So J. Marvin Herndon starts writing all these peer-reviewed journal entries about, trying to publish science about coal fly ash. And they keep throwing his papers out of the peer-reviewed journal process. They're like, this is not well cited. This is fucking incorrect, blah, 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 blah. finally he reaches out to me, and I said, do you realize that if you just stop saying coal fly ash and you said carbon black, everything you said would be true? And then I gave him all the citations, and he claims to be a doctor, and then he keeps on writing papers about. I said, all right, look, bro, I'll throw you a bone. The only mention of coal fly ash you're ever going to hear comes from bunker fuel and ship tracks, and it was mentioned one time on the entire internet in one journal entry. That's it. Doesn't want to hear it. Michael Murphy, he made What in the World Are They Spraying? Why in the World Are They Spraying? When he went to make his third film, he contacted me because he had finally learned about carbon black and black carbon. We talked, and I, on the phone, and I'm sending him links via Facebook, and he's like, oh my God, this literally answers everything. I'm going to make my entire third film about this. 2 weeks later, he was crazy, burnout, delusional, making live videos on Facebook. He died alone on the streets because of Dane Wigington. Because Dane Wigington outed him as a drug addict and then called his entire family members and made sure that they wouldn't give him $1 or a place to stay.
Wow.
This is all documented. I have all the receipts. Max Bliss, the guy that went with me to the EPA, and he's from France. He flew over here and went with me to the EPA to testify. Max Bliss reposted a Dane Wigington video. Dane Wigington copyright claimed him because that's what he does to everybody. He did it to Renette. He did it to Jamie Lee, plaintruth.info. And when I heard Jamie Lee say it, and what he was going through, I'm like, I got that same lawyer paper from that, say, Jose Delgado or whatever the fuck is. No, it's actually the MK Ultra guy. Anyway, he's got this cookie cutter lawyer threatening letter that he sends out. Well, he copyright strikes Max Bliss, who had 15,000 subscribers on YouTube, and he lost his channel. So I call him. And this, at the time, we were still on speaking terms. I said, dude, friendly fire. He literally reposted your video. He put in the details, go to Geoengineering Watch, credit Dane Wigington, Geoengineering Watch, all of that. I was like, at the very least, take it back. Dude lost his whole channel. You know what he said to me? I didn't make his channel get deleted. He obviously had been a bad boy before I ever came along because it takes 3 strikes to get a channel deleted. I was like, but dude, that's fucking cold.
That's absolutely cold.
It's brutal.
It can be taken down after 1 strike too. And in today's setup, yeah, absolutely. It can be.
Yeah, I mean, so just...
Wow.
I have distanced myself from, most of them at this point.
Yeah.
Because I see, I've seen the behind the scenes from all of these people.
Yeah.
And it's so shady. And of course there's going to be people like Darren losing their fucking minds. They've been gaslit for decades now. And kind of ironic because I talk about jet fuel gaslit. I like that. Anyway, now that I'm at the place where I'm at, I just go, let's be realistic about this. I become more jaded every single month that I do this is the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Because the longer I do this, the more I know about the dirty history of the people that are out there claiming to be activists, regurgitating shit from my website. Matt Lamon literally made a film called Frankenskies, and Dominic was actually in chat earlier. I don't know if he's still there, but Dominic's the one who made all those newspaper articles. The entire beginning portion of Frankenskies, the movie, he stole from Weather Modification Histories. There he is right there.
All those newspapers?
He stole those newspapers, Am I lying? If I'm lying, I'm dying, right? Dominic, did Matt Lamon steal your work for Frankenskies? No, we put that stuff up as Creative Commons International Non-Commercial 4.0. And yeah, Matt's a clown. It's right. It's right there. Dominic wanted to sue him because he was actually taking our free content that we were giving away for free.
Yeah.
As long as you just give credit to where you got it from. This is about sharing is caring.
Yeah.
And he took that material, erased our watermarks from the images.
Wow.
And then put it in a film, and then wrote the whole script based on my website, and then sold DVDs, and then did like chemtrail conferences until he got a directed energy weapon attack on himself. And now he sells EMF protection underwear, and he doesn't do this anymore. But he got into it to make a film and make money. I know so because he approached me with the leader of the Zeitgeist movement and some other producer I don't know. The three of them had a 3-hour conversation with me and my wife about how to get rid of Dane Wigington and how to make a documentary to bring truth to the chemtrail community. And he made his money and he got the fuck out.
Wow.
And the story just keeps going on and on and on. I could literally gossip like a schoolgirl about these people, but yeah. I think the facts in the first 2 hours are much more interesting. But yeah, I could literally do a podcast 1 hour to 2 hours a week for the next year, just telling the stories about these scoundrels that have been bullshitting everybody on the internet. But it's,
that's important too.
Oh, it absolutely is. Absolutely is. Because the whole point that we do these is to educate the public and educate them properly. Like, at least,
well, that was kind of the purpose. Like, right? Yeah. Like I got a 40-hour a week job, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. My dad owns a trailer park. That's, I'm going to inherit it one day. Like me and my brother, we're going to inherit it and all the problems that come with it. I got 2 daughters. I've been married 25 years. I'm a lucky man. God has blessed me, no doubt. Yeah. But I don't have time to like personally educate every motherfucker on the planet. That's why I built ClimateViewer.com. Yeah. That's why I built WeatherModificationHistory.com. That's why I went and redesigned the damn thing and combined it all into one website so you could literally come to one webpage and learn it all. And if that's not enough, you can go to climateviewer.org and then see it all mapped out in 3D and see the weather modification projects and where all the, ionospheric heaters and ice incoherent scatter radars, all that stuff is. Mapping out pollution, privacy. I got all the NSA spy facilities, all that stuff on there. I created these tools so that people can educate themselves. Yeah. And if you don't want to read, if you're, just too lazy to read, I can't help you. Like, bro, I can't like personally do this for everybody, but you can go and you can read these things yourself. And, that's the PowerPoint presentations right there. You can download it as a PDF or download the original PowerPoint yourself. Like if you click download PDF right there, it'll literally be that PowerPoint presentation I just gave in that video. Yep. And you can email it to somebody. And it's all right there. That's the one that I did for G. Edward Griffin's thing. That was before I even created Weather Modification History. I announced at that conference I was going to make it when I got home. 2 months later, it was made. So I do these things so that, it's like, here's a free self-education system. Mm-hmm. I'm going to constantly upgrade it. That way you can go there and you can learn yourself, but you got to have the intellectual curiosity to do it.
And you have to want to.
Right. If you don't want to, I don't blame you. My life would be so much simpler if I had just stuck to playing freaking Call of Duty and started streaming that. I'd be rich right now. I would not be shadow banned. I would have no problems with monetization. Shit, there'd be companies paying for the equipment that goes in my computer, as opposed to me having to scrape up donations from GoFundMe or from Patreon to be able to afford, computer parts and this freaking microphone. All this stuff has been from donations from people saying thank you. But at the end of the day, I don't blame people for wanting to remain blissfully ignorant on anything. I'm not, I go back to Margaret Mead and her quote, "Never doubt that a group of small, dedicated individuals can change the world. In fact, they're the only thing that ever has."
Yeah, that's right. We've actually said that many times too. Yeah.
So that's the truth. I don't need to, even the CIA said, we don't have to convince everybody. It only takes convincing about 20%, less than 20% of a population.
3.5%.
Yeah, that was a quick. Yep. Thank you. Yeah. 3.5% of a population to literally overthrow a government.
Yeah, that's.
So we don't need to change everybody's perception, their opinion. We just need to get enough people who are organized and care about this to understand the topic well enough to change it. And as a model of history, you look at AIDS activists. You had a bunch of, gay dudes back in the day saying, look, we want the right to try these chemicals, these new drugs. Mm-hmm. And the FDA and all these people were saying, no, you can't. And you look at how they won. How'd they win? I saw this documentary on it, and it was just beautiful. You had these dudes in a room. There's doctors lining one wall. There's citizen activists who got a real stake in the game because literally all their friends are dying. And the doctor says, well, actually, the lab results say this, this, and this. And the motherfuckers over there like, no, actually, bro, if you read this paper, they say completely different. And on this paper, they said the exact same thing. And these dudes also independently verified it from this lab. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. These dudes were able to shout those scientists, those appeal to authority, PhDs. I got a PhD. My post hole digger came from Tractor Supply Company. And I'll tell you what, I could dig a deeper hole and throw you in it with my PhD than you can with yours. And that's all people need to do is be real good with your post hole digger and dig a hole for them to fall in. You just got to be educated enough to do it. They did it with the civil rights movement. They did it with the AIDS epidemic. You look at history and where activists won and how they did it and how long it took to do it, and model your movements, your plans after winners, not losers. And I guess the last piece of shit I'm going to throw on somebody like Dane Wigington or anybody of his ilk is this. If somebody is on the internet scaring the shit out of you on a daily basis and they don't give you a solution, they are not an activist. They are an info fucking tainer.
Mm-hmm. That's true. That's very true.
100%.
And that's where I draw the line. My solution is at climateviewer.com/NMOD, ENMOD. It's called the Environmental Modification Accountability Act. It's an addendum to the Weather Warfare Ban of 1978. It's a place to start. I'm working on a federal version of that we can push in our country that other countries can mirror as well. We'd also like to mirror that with state by state legislation, where I not only give you a draft legislation that you go get passed, but it comes with an appendix that already has all the questions answered that the committee's going to ask you when you get there. Mm-hmm. So that when you get there and they're like, well, how do we know that metals are coming out of these planes? That's in the appendix, the supplemental material, Appendix D. And when you go there, the scientists are going to be flipping through the thing, and all you had to do is print it out, and they're going to go, yeah, we're going to have to review this in committee. We'll have to get some scientists up here to review this. The scientists are going to be like, yeah, that's fucking legit. I mean, that paper that he cited has been cited by 441 other scientists. So those all 441 scientists that cited the paper he's citing, they're staking their reputation and their careers that what that person said was true. So when you can give somebody a piece of legislation that's backed up by a mountain of evidence, then you don't have to get so deep in the weeds like a person like me. I want to give you the silver bullet, and it's going to take me a while to craft that silver bullet, because in lawfare, one word can undo your argument. And in the case of the Tennessee ban, that word was deliberate. And then they added a second silver bullet, with the express purpose of. So if your express purpose wasn't geoengineering, weather modification, or changing the temperature of the climate, your express purpose was to get the Amazon boxes from here to there, or to fly these motherfuckers to Rio de Janeiro. That's all you got to say.
Yeah.
And then the unintended consequence is permissible.
It's not even covered by it.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I've always said this: the chemtrail conspiracy boils down to a single word: intent. If you cannot prove intent, you cannot win. Now, it's true you can put somebody in an electric chair and fry them deader than dirt with enough circumstantial evidence, but you still need to be able to prove intent if you want to win a court case or file legislation that has teeth that can actually be enforceable in the future.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of my, that's my operating procedure. That's the way I think. And I readily admit, Darren, wish you were still here. I could be wrong.
He may still be.
I'm just saying, I've been doing this 15 years.
Yeah.
I've been wrong in the past. I've pivoted and I've, corrected. The difference is I will make the effort to go back into my website and go, yeah, that was fucking wrong. And then change it, because I don't want to leave that wrong thing there. Because guess what? Somebody's going to come along and read that, believe it's true, and I know it's not true anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to self-correct also. So I'll readily admit, don't take my word for it. Do your own research. It's kind of like a cliche, but shit, it's the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I am fallible. I am human. If you don't recognize that about yourself, you got an ego problem. I do have an ego problem because I'm right 99.8% of the time. But regardless, you
certainly have the evidence for it. You've certainly done up the research on it. You're, like I said, now you've given me a new hobby. I'm going to be scouring your website. Amazing work. And I'm going to wrap this up. We're at almost three.
Hold on, Kerry. We can't be done yet.
Can't be
I got to
done
mention
yet?
this. This is actually a record. This is a record-breaking show. No, this is the show where I haven't talked more than the guest. You have so much information. I want to keep going, and I want to absorb more of it. I'm going to check out your website when I got some time, but that's like the depth of knowledge that you've amassed over this, and the evidence to back it up. I've never seen anything like that.
Jim, once you do your interview with the pilot, we would like to have you back on. Whether or not that's in 3 months from now or whatever, but we're definitely going to reach out to you again, because we definitely want to follow up on what
it's ironic that last night I spent 3 hours and 38 minutes talking about the same damn thing we're talking about now.
Yeah.
but it was much more rapid fire because with her, you know, we quickly moved past geoengineering. She got all that in the first like 45 minutes.
Yeah.
We spent almost 2 hours just talking about what the fuck to do about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the most interesting part for me. You know, like I have questions too.
Yeah.
I don't have it all figured out. I want to have a clear plan. And I'm not going to like go out there blowing my horn saying, I've got it all figured out. Here's the solution. Follow me. I got the flag. Let's go up that hill until I know damn well I do. And, you know, even, you know, Renette, you know, there's been a couple of people who were like, you know, let me know the minute you have that draft legislation ready so that we can go out there and get it out there. And I'm like, I'm going to remind you, I have a 40-hour-a-week job.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 3.5 hours last night talking to a pilot. I've spent 3.5 hours tonight talking to you guys.
That's right.
Which means I haven't done shit else. And
7+ hours. Yeah, you're right.
This Saturday, I'm doing a Zoom call for my Patreons and anybody who's a paying subscriber on Substack, which I've been promising to do for like 2 damn years. So, you know, I'm actually going to be switching to StreamYard, just like you guys are using, because I've been using Open Broadcaster with Restream for so long. But now I've gotten to a point where I have a list of about 7 people that want to come on my show that I can have conversations with. And I want simplicity in my life. And it doesn't get any simpler than, you know, I've been on so many people.
This is a great platform, and
I mean,
you can tweak it. I mean, there are limitations, as you know, you're a techie, so you'll quickly realize what the limitations are. But for just getting the content out there and you know, doing up graphics or whatever, that's all you need. Yeah. Chimley will talk through.
Barb knows. Barb's been there for all of it.
Yeah. That is awesome.
I usually do Sunday night shows on my YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. I stream simultaneously. Right now I am with Restream to YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. I said fuck Facebook because they literally removed 19 posts in like the last 2 weeks. Yeah. And they called them spam. They said that I was deceptively trying to get likes, which is like the craziest thing ever. Like I don't even go on your fucking platform. I hate you people.
I've seen that on Facebook where people have been blocked, and that's the comment, is that you're deliberately trying to get likes, and it's like, no, we're just having a conversation, or we're just posting something, and I don't know. I guess the algorithm says this is the way
they deleted everything and then completely left my election rigging post alone from Substack that literally talks about how the Department of Homeland Security and the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, so important they had to put security in the title twice, CISA, is basically threatening social media to censor, you know, all this content. So if you said election rigging or COVID-19 or, you know, hydroxychloroquine or ivermectin, you were medically banned, you know, from YouTube. Or that's how I lost my Discord chat. It was all through CISA and the DHS and the Atlantic Council. And basically Mike Ben's Foundation for Freedom Online. I wrote up about this and how they were threatening social media platforms $50-something million per post if they did not give the government access directly to censor individuals. So without Twitter or Facebook intervening, that somebody from the Department of Homeland Security at CISA could literally go in and say, yeah, that Hunter Biden laptop story, that's fake, and anybody that says it's real, let's make that go away. And that changed the outcome of the election, and we got Joseph R. Brandon. And if they didn't censor that Hunter Biden laptop story, we wouldn't have Let's Go Brandon in the White House. But Trump has been found guilty of paying a porn star with an NDA, and that was election meddling. The fuck is going? We have left the Twilight Zone and went into Bizarro world.
Yeah.
So that's the reality of the situation, and it was so creepy that it's almost like Facebook's going, yeah, that really does suck. And, you know, I'm not going to block you saying that the government's threatening us to censor stuff, you know, people, but I'm going to censor every other damn thing you just said. We're going to leave this one post up there. And it was just like, I don't even get it anymore. I don't get it anymore. I give up.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, you're never going to find somebody who.
No, so we briefly talked about it. I'm hoping this is more just a 2-minute conversation. We briefly talked about you don't fly, right? You take trains and automobiles, I guess. Would it be something you'd be interested in coming up to Canada and having a conversation or getting involved with a group of people here to maybe influence
The
some policy?
question sounds familiar.
So yeah, Chris had mentioned that, and my current situation is this. Although, you know, I'm a paid shill and I have this huge government contract from the CIA.
So does Chris.
Yeah, me too.
In reality, I'm the sole provider for my family right now. So because I work security and because it's so hard to find people who can work in a government building that have a perfectly clean record and, you know, can pass the shooting requirements, have a gun on their hip and a sled license. Me getting a day off is like insanely rare.
Understood. Yeah.
I mean, I literally went to work with COVID and I called my boss that morning and I was like, get somebody here as soon as possible. I got there at 8 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Somebody showed up when I went to the ER and he found out I had COVID. He's like, you went to work with COVID? I was like, what the fuck else was I supposed to do? And I mean, honestly, you know, like I'm going to the beach for a week and that's pretty much the only time that I can get off is that 1 week vacation. But in 2 years, 3 at the very most, my wife is going to be graduating from college because she went back to college so that she can make like $80,000 a year and we can build a nice big studio for Jimbo and he could do this full time and get back to going places. Hell, I might even fly. Now I'm going to look really funny on there with a literally like moon suit. So I don't have to breathe all the chemtrails, but regardless, you know, I do want to get back out there. I miss it. And, you know, it's been a couple of years. 2015 EPA, 2016 Ed Griffin, 2018 AMS Weather Modification Conference. I had Graves' disease the entire time. I was very sick. I had my thyroid removed 2019. And if you look at my old videos, I look like Skeletor. I mean, there's no nice way to put it, bro. I look like Skeletor. And now I'm healthy again and I'm able to actually do it and I'm not stressed out. So I'm looking forward to that freedom that's going to come at the end of the rainbow, but I've got to tough it out, you know, for the fam until my wife, you know, she's like, look, you know, once I finish this, I've only got to work 3 days a week and I'm going to make, you know,
that's right.
Double what you're making.
Yeah.
So you go and save the world and I'm going to, you know, do this. And then hopefully you damn right I want to come up to Canada.
Good.
And the great thing about it is I'm going to bring my family with me because that was the whole plan all along. You only get one life to live and there would be nothing better than to be able to take my children, take my wife, put them up in a hotel, go hang out with my friend, quite frankly, in New York, you know, been on his show, quite frankly, TV, go out to the West Coast. You know, I've been invited to so many places and I just haven't been able to do it. Sure. And, you know, actually have a conference, you know, where I bring people and hopefully can talk some of these other people into coming and giving a presentation that doesn't make me go, all right, get off the fucking stage. You're being scary again. But that's the kind of stuff I would love to do in the future. And, you know, organize some actual protests.
Yeah.
Because there haven't really been any, and I don't get it. So maybe a little civil disobedience.
Well, come up to Canada, because we seem to have protests all the time from you name it. What we're protesting on, and I don't remember growing up with that at all.
We just weren't paying attention, but it seems like this time maybe I hear South Carolina is pretty nice most times of the year anyway. So maybe we'll come down there and make you a hamburger. Who knows?
Oh, dude, you got to come down here. Honestly, I live in the Garden of Eden. I don't care what anybody says about, you know, the South. You know, there's a whole lot of misconceptions about, oh, we're all a bunch of dullards and we're hicks and rednecks and we're stupid and slow and we're racist. And no, I've been all over the United States, and I'm gonna tell you what, where I live in South Carolina, the people are well, I got it backwards. The food is good and the people are better. And it's just the truth.
Yeah.
You know,
But is there peach tea and biscuits with gravy?
Excuse me?
Is there peach tea and biscuits with gravy?
No, we call it sweet tea.
Sweet tea.
There we go.
That's sweet tea. Yeah.
Yeah, we have plenty of sweet tea. We've got the best barbecue, noun, not verb, you've ever tasted. I found out that the rest of the United States thinks that barbecue is a thing you do as opposed to a thing you eat. But slow roasted, very low and slow cooked pork, vinegar based barbecue sauce.
We do barbecue up here in Alberta, so
Specifically right at my cafe,
that's right.
Yeah. Some of the best in the world. They had like the barbecue trail, and like the last 3 years, a dude from South Carolina has won it. Just the best shit on earth. But yeah, I mean everything we have down here, it's bad for you. It wants to kill you, but you're going to be very fat and happy.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say this: I can go into any gas station, and the conversation that we just had, I can have that conversation from anyone from 81-year-old black man to a 13-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter, like people don't care. You know what I mean? As long as you aren't just being stupid racist, which nobody seems to be. And I haven't seen one in decades. So you can walk into anywhere.
The media says there is, right?
But I'm going to remind you this. This is just the truth, and this pisses everybody off.
Yeah.
Freddie Gray, what was the other guy? I Can't Breathe. Can't remember his name right now. Ferguson.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
All of those places where these, black person gets shot, whole city burns to the ground.
Yeah.
Dylan Roof walks into a historically black church that has a lot of historical significance, even back to, we won't get into it. Anyway, Dylan Roof goes in, shoots up this black church. The Obama buses show up with the agitators to try to get the same shit going, but it doesn't work down here. You know why? We all know each other. We all love each other. We love our neighbors. We survive hurricanes. Everybody comes together to pick up the pieces. And when they turned on the television and they saw black people and white people in that church hugging each other, crying together, they were fucking furious because they couldn't turn it into, this black versus white, like pretty hate machine that they love to do all the time. Politicians love to capitalize on these things. And when they saw love and forgiveness in Charleston, South Carolina, voted friendliest city in America 10 years in a row.
Yeah.
Tells you something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a different world down here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love my home, and I think that we have some of the greatest people. And that's not me just, bragging on my home state. I know it because I've been outside. I lived in Arizona for 7 years. I loved it, but the people were fucking aliens. And everybody we tried to become friends with were meth heads. Like, it was insane. That being said, guys, yeah, we should wrap it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're talking about barbecue, and I realized I skipped supper.
I was going to say, Chris, do you want to wrap up any last thoughts, and then we'll call it a night. So, but first of all, I'm just going to say thank you, Jim, and wow, thank you for the people that have been watching and right from the beginning. I know there's a lot of people that are still on here right from the beginning. You guys are all amazing. Thanks for the support that you've given to Chris and myself, and of course, go to check out climateviewer.com with Jim and be some educated there. Get some words in your mouth and some, especially the way that Jim was talking about it right at the beginning. Words matter, and make sure that you're actually talking the slave speak or the way you should be speaking to everybody else. Yeah.
Well, I end every video that I make with the saying, and I think it matters that people remember that don't dehumanize people, attack ideas, not people. And that gets twisted up a lot of times because they're like, but you just called Dane Wigington a motherfucker. And I'm like, but he is a motherfucker. And they're like, well, why are you attacking him? Those are words. That's not violence. Violence is different than words. If you think words are violence, you're part of the problem. There is no such thing as hate speech. There's only speech that you hate. There is either free speech or no speech. Speech is not violence. But when I say attack ideas, not people, I mean attack their ideas. Call them whatever you like. Do it however you like. But that still means hands off. Do no harm. Don't hurt people. Yeah. And that's where we really need to simmer down now, because all of these people talking about shooting down planes and rounding up. I've got a guy in my Telegram chat, and I'm telling you, his name is Ian. He's from Canada. He's from Alberta, and he's a hothead. And I have to chill him out at least once a week where he's like, no, I know these goddamn people, they're doing it, and we need to round them up and hang them all. And I'm like, Ian, you doing it again? He's like, I'm going to go have a whiskey. And he comes back a couple hours later. He's like, all right, sorry about that.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, please, use the information, learn the information, but then when you decide to do something about it, attack ideas, not people. Yeah. That's the most important part.
Very wise words. Awesome. Chris?
Well, you know what? I'm almost speechless, but not quite. So yeah, of course, thank you, Jim, for coming on tonight. I know you're a really busy guy. Thank you for the work you've been doing. And a lot of the things you say, it's like you're saying it for me in a way that I can't. The sentiments are the same. The reason I decided not to just listen to the people who would say, oh, you're going to lose supporters if you talk about chemtrails and you be a chemtrail denier, was me watching people get bullied about it, watching people threatening pilots and threatening to cause harm to civil aviation. I don't tolerate any of that stuff. And then, people telling me I need to shut my mouth about it, that just put me over the edge. So I do want to find out the truth about these things. I do want to find a way to solve problems that we know we have. And I think the work you're doing is gonna, this is laying the foundation to solving these problems. So you'll be remembered.
I think you nailed it, dude. Because at the end of the day, the more these bullies try to tell me to shut up, the harder I'm going to go. Like, about the time I feel like quitting just because I'm like, oh God, why do I do this? Somebody goes and runs their fucking mouth. And then I'm like, Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
do it because of fucking Darren's. Well, you know what Darren's are?
That's right.
Darren rhymes with Karen. And snowflakes like you bitches keep me fired up. So, as long as there are bullies out there, they say you catch the most flack when you're over the target. As long as there are bullies out there telling me to shut up, sit down, take a back seat, stop talking about this, don't you know it's only going to hurt you? You know what? If I believe it's the truth, I'm willing to walk through fire. And the only way you're going to be able to shut me up is to physically do it. And good luck with that. So, yeah, I've abhorred bullies since I was a child. I have an uncontrollable urge to break bullies, and I have a pretty good track record of doing it. So, I'm going to keep on bullying the bullies. And if the airline industry wants to be a bully, you're going to find out that I'm very creative, and we are creative.
Yeah.
So,
I do like those ideas. Yeah.
Well, you keep doing that down there. We're going to keep doing this up here. Hopefully someday we'll get to come and visit and try some of that barbecue. And in the meantime, you did mention the most important thing, which is our families. Let's go spend a little bit of time with our families before we got to turn in.
That sounds great.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me. And yeah, I'm going to go hug my kids because they're probably still up. It's summertime and they don't have to get up when daddy has to. And I stayed up way too late last night. I went to bed at like 1 o'clock, got up at 6:30. And I said I wasn't going to do it tonight. And then I said, oh, yeah, but you got that interview and you don't shut up. You don't have an off button.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I get it.
All right.
I get
All right.
it.
Well, with that, I'm going to say goodnight to everybody, and we'll see you again soon.
Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Love you, meaning it. If this video resonates with you, leave me a comment because I love hearing from y'all. First time here, be sure to subscribe and click the bell. Yeah! Remember, it would be impossible for me to do this without your support, so please join my Patreon or buy me a coffee on PayPal. And always, attack ideas, not people.